I've always prided myself on being a generous person, but the last few months have turned that belief on its head, and now, I find myself questioning my own values. My girlfriend, Rachel, and I had been together for just over a year when she broached the subject of her kids needing cars. Now, let me clarify, Rachel has 2 children from a previous marriage, Jenna, who is 15, and Max, who is 13. From the moment I met them, I felt an instant bond. Jenna had this fierce spirit, often caught between her childhood and looming adulthood, while Max was a whirlwind of energy, always looking to make people laugh. Sharing time with them was pure joy. Yet, as Rachel's kids got older, the conversations inevitably shifted to the need for independence. They wanted their own rides to school, friends' houses, and extracurricular activities. It was an ordinary Thursday when Rachel casually said, "You know, I've been thinking the kids really need cars to be more independent. Wouldn't it be great if we could pick something up for them?" At first, I chuckled, thinking she was joking. Surely, she didn't expect me to dive into a discussion about buying 2 cars just like that. But when I saw the look on her face, half serious, half hopeful, I realized this was no lighthearted suggestion. I could feel the knot tightening in my stomach as I recalled my own struggles. I was still paying off student loans and saving to start a life of my own. I hesitated, my mind racing through various possibilities, trying to balance my own financial responsibility with the desire to support Rachel and her family. The conversation became heated, but I remained calm. "Rachel, I love your kids, but I can't afford to buy them cars. It's just not realistic for me," I explained, choosing my words with care. She seemed taken aback, disappointment settling in her eyes. "I thought we were in this together," she said softly, and I felt an unwelcome sting of guilt. It wasn't just the idea of cars, it was the unspoken tension between a partner who wanted to share burdens and a guy who was barely keeping his head above water. Over the following weeks, the tension lingered. I noticed subtle changes in Rachel's demeanor. She became quieter, often lost in thought. On one occasion, while driving back from a family dinner, Jenna asked casually if I was going to buy them cars. I felt a sharp pang in my heart, not wanting to disappoint her but also knowing how strained my finances were. "It's complicated, Jenna," I replied, hoping to deflect. The laughter we used to share felt overshadowed by unspoken expectations and misunderstandings. Around this time, I took a hard look at myself and the relationship. I adored Rachel, and these kids meant the world to me, but it seemed I was inadvertently stepping into roles I wasn't ready for. I loved that Rachel envisioned a future where we united our families, but I had to be cautious about my own needs too. I chose to clear the air. "Rachel," I said one evening, taking her hand. "I care about you and your kids, but I also have to think about my financial goals. I'm not saying I won't help out in other ways, like giving rides or supporting them, but I can't commit to buying them cars." As I confessed my frustrations, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Rachel listened quietly, her expression shifting from disbelief to understanding. "I get it," she said finally, her voice softening. "Sometimes I forget you're still figuring things out for yourself." I could sense the relief in her voice when we turned the corner, leaving anger and disappointment behind. From that point forward, our relationship evolved. I started finding ways to help Jenna and Max without putting myself in financial jeopardy. We worked on small projects together, and I even taught them how to save up for things they wanted. Months later, I received a message from Rachel that made my heart swell. "The kids are working on their savings for cars. I think they've adopted your advice," she wrote, and I couldn't help but smile at the thought of them taking initiative. As we sat together that night, reminiscing over our journey, it became clear that we had come a long way. Though my situation hadn't changed much financially, I was at peace knowing we had built a stronger bond through honesty and support. Reflecting on it all, I found comfort in the notion that relationships aren't about merely giving, they're about growing together through adversity. I had feared being seen as selfish, but in the end, what transpired reaffirmed a truth: it's important to recognize one's own limits and communicate openly. I was still part of their lives, just in a different role. And as I fell asleep that night, I felt grateful for the love we had cultivated amid uncertainty, looking forward to all the moments yet to come. Update: a few weeks later, Rachel and I sat down with Jenna and Max to discuss plans for their first car. Instead of just handing them cash, we organized a small family project, painting and refurbishing an old car Rachel's parents had. The kids were ecstatic and learned invaluable skills throughout the process. Watching them work on something they could own ignited a sense of pride in them, but more importantly, it strengthened our bond as a family. In the end, it was about much more than just the cars. It was a lesson in responsibility, independence, and support that we would all carry forward. As the days turned into weeks, our little project blossomed into something more than just a car refurbishment. It became a way for Jenna and Max to understand the value of hard work and teamwork, lessons that would follow them into adulthood. The garage was filled with a blend of laughter and the occasional argument over color choices, tools, and who was in charge of what task. I found myself laughing more than I had in years, feeling like a part of something bigger as I watched Rachel cheer them on, wiping her hands on an old rag and beaming with pride. One Saturday, I suggested that we decorate the trunk with positive affirmations. Each kid could choose a quote that inspired them. Jenna picked "Believe in yourself," while Max, still a bit of a jokester, went with "I fixed it, so I own it." Rachel and I scrambled to find some old paint and brushes, and soon the trunk of the car emblazoned with their chosen words became a family masterpiece. The act of creating something that was truly theirs, a canvas on wheels, made Jenna and Max light up in ways that store-bought gifts never could. I remember one afternoon, after splashing paint around and making ridiculous faces while trying to channel my inner artist, Jenna turned to me with her bright blue eyes shining. "Will you help us do this again someday?" she asked, her voice earnest. I nodded, caught up in the moment. "Absolutely. This can be the first of many projects. We'll build cars, tree houses, or even go-karts, whatever you can think of." The commitment struck me as I spoke, the weight of my words settled in my chest, but it also felt electric, like I was weaving threads into our growing fabric of family. As the weeks continued to pass, we worked diligently, putting in time every weekend, replacing parts, and learning about the engine. I took on the heavier, more technical parts while Rachel guided the kids through the finer points of sanding and painting. Each task was a chance for Jenna and Max to ask questions, and for us to share stories of our own youthful follies, like the time I managed to get my first car stuck in a mud pit because I thought four-wheel drive meant you could drive anywhere. One evening, while we cleaned up after a particularly messy painting session, I was surprised to see a glimmer of uncertainty appear in Jenna's eyes. She had always been the more confident of the two, but tonight, something was off. "Are we doing it wrong?" she muttered, glancing at the splatters of paint that dotted the ground, some bold strokes that had landed on her shirt. It struck me then just how important this whole experience was to her. If the car didn't turn out perfect, would that mean we had failed some unspoken test? I knelt down beside her, resting my arms on my knees. "What do you think?" I asked gently. "Does it feel like we're working together? Are you having fun?" She frowned for a moment, staring at the paint on her shirt and considering. "Yeah, but the car needs to look perfect." "Jenna," I said softly, "life isn't about being perfect. It's about learning, growing, and having fun along the way." I watched as the words sank in, her expression slowly shifting toward relief and understanding, like the clouds lifting after a storm. Finally, the day came when we would unveil the refurbished car. We had all worked tirelessly, and the anticipation electrified the air as we gathered in the driveway for the big reveal. The sun shone down, catching the bright colors that adorned the car's surface in a way that made it look almost magical. Rachel stood beside me, her hand clasped in mine, her eyes glistening with excitement. Jenna and Max stood in front of the vehicle, their faces a mixture of disbelief and sheer joy, and as they reached out to touch their creation, I felt a surge of pride that ran deeper than I expected. Jenna joined Max in jumping up and down, squealing with happiness, and Rachel and I exchanged a glance, a silent confirmation of what we had built together, not just in terms of the car but within our family unit. I knew this was a moment they would remember, a fragment of time marked by laughter, creativity, and the unwavering bond we shared. Later, as we took turns behind the wheel on a quiet street, what struck me wasn't just the shiny paint or the engine purring, it was the way Jenna and Max discussed their plans for their driving future, each word a reflection of their blossoming maturity and sense of responsibility. I couldn't help but smile, thinking back to the conflict I had initially faced regarding whether or not I should buy them cars. The struggle had been real, but what we gained was immeasurable. As I lay in bed that night, I felt a sense of fulfillment wash over me, a warmth that spread from my chest to my fingertips. In teaching them the value of ownership and effort, I found that I was learning alongside them. Suddenly, our pastime projections morphed into a bonding experience, a way for Rachel and I to not only build cars but to build a family, brick by cherished brick. A week later, I received a message from an old coworker who wanted to update me about a job opening. The idea of returning to work jostled around in my brain, but I barely thought about it. Something deeper was stirring within me. The realization that I didn't need a high-paying job to feel fulfilled came to me like a whisper. I had discovered a different way to be present, engaged, and genuinely happy. Although our yard was filled with laughter from our car projects, I had also conjured an understanding that family was not just defined by blood, but by the memories we created together. Several months later, as our car adventures continued to unfold, Jenna and Max decided they wanted to do something special for Rachel and me. One afternoon, they surprised us with a picnic in the park, complete with sandwiches and homemade cookies that had some very creative, but slightly chaotic icing. We laughed as they took charge of the basket, and as we settled down beneath a tree, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. As I watched the kids run around, their laughter a melody of joy, I realized that I would never trade these moments for material things. I might not have given them cars without conditions at first, but I had given them the tools to navigate life more effectively, which would prove to be far more valuable in the long run. Reflecting on everything, I realized that though my initial hesitation stemmed from wanting to be a responsible adult rather than a flashy type, it had led to something far more profound, and although I would probably always be the one saying, "Let's paint the trunk," I had also become the dad who could tell a joke, share genuine pieces of wisdom, and make memories that would last a lifetime. Sometimes, I would hear Jenna and Max reminiscing about our adventures, and I couldn't help but feel that we were building not just a family of the future but a legacy, one filled not just with cars but with the cherished stories of our lives. As the days passed, our weekends became filled with laughter, paint splatters, and the smell of motor oil, a unique blend of chaos and joy that transformed our garage into a makeshift workshop and a haven for memories. Rachel would often send me gentle nudges of encouragement as I attempted to wield a wrench while Jenna and Max handled the power tools with surprising finesse. Each time they'd succeed in fastening a bolt or sanding down a rough edge, their smiles would widen, the joy resonating in their eyes as if they'd just conquered a mountain. These moments were powerful reminders of how quickly they were growing up, and each project fueled my desire to be more present and supportive in their lives. One evening, as dusk began to settle in, we found ourselves sprawled out on an old blanket we'd tossed in the trunk while we waited for paint to dry. The kids shared their dreams. Jenna wanted to travel the world and write stories of her adventures, while Max, always the jokester, mused about becoming a famous comedian. As I listened, I realized that this experience was about more than just cars. It was forging a foundation for their ambitions and aspirations. Weeks later, the old car began to transform. It was no longer just a rusted frame. It became a vibrant representation of teamwork, laughter, and shared sweat. We painted it in bold blues and cheerful yellows, mixing colors as if each swirl of paint was a thread in the tapestry of our newly formed family. Friends and neighbors stopped by, often asking if they could lend a hand, turning our small project into a community affair. One Saturday afternoon, while the kids and I painted the hood, Rachel appeared with freshly baked cookies, and her eyes sparkled with pride as she watched us. I felt a warmth in my chest knowing that I was no longer just a boyfriend to her. I had evolved into a partner and a father figure, nurturing the lives around me with kindness, patience, and a whole lot of love. When the project finally reached completion, the sense of accomplishment was palpable. The day we unveiled the finished car was nothing short of magical. Jenna and Max jumped up and down, their faces lit with astonished delight as we took a family picture beside the newly restored vehicle. However, with this joy came an underlying anxiety rooted in my mind. Would they expect the same kind of effort and commitment forever? What if life became too busy, or what if the bond we had nurtured began to unravel? I discussed these uncertainties with Rachel one quiet evening when the kids were snugly tucked in. We illuminated the room with soft light, a warm cup of tea in hand, and she shared a reassuring sentiment. "It's normal to worry," she said, resting her head on my shoulder. "But remember, it's not about the cars or the crafts. It's about creating a space where they feel valued and supported, whether it's with paintbrushes or just by listening to their hopes. They'll remember the love, not just the projects." Her words resonated deep within me, and I realized she was right. These kids, Jenna and Max, were resilient and adaptive, just as life would need them to be. My role wasn't to guarantee a perfect scenario constantly but rather to be their constant support through life's uncertainties. As days turned to months, I witnessed their confidence blossom, not just in their abilities with mechanics but also in their schoolwork and friendships. They naturally began taking leadership roles among their classmates, eagerly engaging in school projects. Each time they tackled a new challenge, I felt a surge of pride that they might carry the values we cultivated through our weekend car projects into the rest of their lives, providing a sense of direction only strengthened by the love we built together. Reflecting on this journey, I found clarity in accepting my title as dad in their lives. embracing the role with open arms. As winter approached, and car maintenance became less frequent, we shifted our focus to indoor projects. Jigsaw puzzles and game nights filled the house with energy. The old car stood proudly outside, an emblem of our collective achievements and the dawning of a familial bond that felt everlasting. I often pondered the future but found comfort in knowing that our legacy would consist of more than material objects. It would be woven with the stories of resilience, compassion, and unwavering support that would carry us through any trials that lay ahead. Update: fast forward several years, and the old car became a treasured memento. Jenna and Max took it to prom with their friends, painted stars on the roof, and filled it with memories I knew would last them a lifetime. And as Rachel and I watched them drive off into the night, her hands securely clasped in mine, I felt overwhelming gratitude for every moment, good and bad, that had brought us here, a beautifully imperfect family, ready to face the world together, one adventure at a time. The day I stumbled upon the life hack that changed everything for me began like any other. I was just an average guy named Jake, working a monotonous desk job in a bustling city and barely scraping by. My apartment was small, cramped, and perpetually cluttered, a chaotic reflection of my life's trajectory. Little did I know, lurking in the depths of the internet on a mundane Tuesday afternoon, I would discover something that felt almost sacred, an insider's guide to life improvement, buried within a thread titled "Ask Reddit What's a Life Hack So Good You Almost Don't Want to Share It?" As I read through the comments, most of which comprised people sharing their mediocre tips like freezing grapes for chillin' wine, I almost tuned out, but then I found it, a simple yet profound suggestion that promised to revolutionize my approach to work and life in general. Set your alarm to wake up exactly 1 hour earlier every day. Your productivity and mental clarity will skyrocket. I was doubtful at first, rolled my eyes at the idea of sacrificing an hour of sleep, but I couldn't shake the thought. After wrestling with my own frustrations about work and feeling like a ship lost at sea, I resolved to give it a shot. The first morning was an exercise in pure dread as my alarm screamed at me from across the room. Each minute of extra dark, quiet solitude felt like a battle against my will to stay under the covers, but the slight glow of a new dawn soon coaxed me into action. I brewed a pot of coffee that smelled like a promise fulfilled, sat down at my rickety kitchen table, and, for the first time in ages, opened my laptop to write. I poured out my thoughts, projects I had ideas for but never the energy to start, and plans I had shelved away like dusty books. And that first week of waking up early transformed my life. I began each day with purpose, finding hours that had previously slipped through my fingers like grains of sand. My productivity soared, and my mental health felt lighter, free from the weight of procrastination that had shackled me for years. You might say it was euphoric. I found a rhythm, a harmony with the world. I was able to exercise, meditate, read more, a zen oasis amid my chaotic existence. But as the days turned into weeks, I faced an unexpected dilemma that sent ripples through my newfound routine. My older brother, Tom, who had always been my confidant and trusted ally, doted on me during our weekly catch-ups, but recently, I noticed a growing concern etched across his face. One sunny Saturday, when we met up for coffee, he hesitated before speaking. "Jake, this is the third weekend in a row that you've been too busy for dinner with the family. Can we talk about it?" The guilt hit me like a punch to the gut. I wanted to scream that this new lifestyle was essential for my well-being, but instead, I waded through the rising disappointment in his voice. I had suddenly become this creature of habit, my joys tethered to early mornings. But in doing so, had I cut off the companionship I'd cherished with my brother? I sank into a quiet internal storm, sliding between being proud of my improvements and grappling with the social rift they caused. After days of self-reflection, I realized I needed a balance, a compromise that would allow me to retain the tranquility of my mornings while still nurturing my important relationships. I resolved to give Tom a call that evening, and after an honest conversation filled with apologies and explanations, a truce was formed. Rather than abandon my new routine, we agreed on Sunday dinners, where we could catch up without intrusion. I could have my productivity without forsaking my family, an ideal fusion of my previous and present selves. It was a delicate harmony, one that came from understanding the deeper implications of my choices, and it transformed our relationship back into its former warmth. And so, as the seasons shifted and with them, my mornings evolved into sacred rituals rather than just productivity fueled by desperation. I discovered the clarity of thought that dreams and conversations shared over meals can lead to, a tangible surplus of joy that exceeded the figurative weight in hours gained. A few weeks passed, each morning becoming a grounding part of my routine, infusing my soul with energy. One evening, I found myself sitting on my couch, looking out at the world tinted by dusk, and I reflected on how sharing my newfound life hack had cultivated a multitude of connections, unexpected friendships blossoming where I had once dwelled in solitude. Life had its way of reminding me of the interconnections we often overlook. As I sit here typing this, I wonder if sharing my hack was indeed a good idea. It blurs the line of private joy and communal upliftment. Would the power I found in those early mornings hold the same sacred space if I distributed it freely? Maybe one life hack isn't meant to be kept a secret but shared, reshaped, and transformed through the experiences of every person who dares to wake up to life's offering in their own unique way. And as I concluded my thoughts, I realized the most poignant truth of all: sometimes a simple life hack opens the door not just to personal growth, but to richer bonds, deeper understanding, and a redefined sense of purpose, inviting us to embrace it all without reservation, life's essentials mingling with its greatest treasures. As I sat in the soft glow of the morning sun filtering through the kitchen window, I felt a sense of calm settle around me. My mind, though racing with the implications of what I had just thought, was juxtaposed against the sheer beauty of the day awakening outside. The world felt intoxicatingly fresh, a canvas waiting for the gentle strokes of life that I was slowly beginning to understand. You see, the life hack I stumbled upon didn't involve any fancy apps or complicated productivity systems, but rather an uncomplicated shift in perspective. I had learned that sometimes, the most mundane ritual, waking up with intention, could, in its own quiet way, transform the trajectory of my day, my relationships, and my joy. Over the past few months, I had experimented with this idea, rising earlier than I was accustomed to, before the chaos of the world invaded my peaceful sanctuary. It began as a desperate attempt to reclaim time from my perpetual morning rush, an irritation born from the mundane trappings of life, scrolling through emails, hurried breakfasts, and the nagging sense that I was losing precious moments to start afresh. But that diligent push to wake up earlier unfurled into something far richer. As I carved out an hour before the day's demands stole my attention, I found a space to breathe. I moved in slow motion, making a warm cup of tea, journaling about my thoughts and dreams, and even meditating in the quiet embrace of my home. Each sip of that warm beverage would wrap around me like a gentle hug, reinforcing my resolve to step into the day with clarity, purpose, and an open heart. Honestly, it felt extraordinary, like I was gifted a secret chamber of time where worries could not penetrate and the weight of expectation floated away. I began to notice how this small act of self-care rippled through the hours ahead of me. I was more present during breakfast with my family, more patient with the unpredictable whims of children, and more engaged in conversations that I used to let flow past me like white noise. It was as if I had donned a new pair of glasses, sharpening details in my perspective I had long dismissed. I reveled in quiet drives to work and greeted colleagues with renewed warmth. However, with this blossoming joy emerged an unexpected hesitation. Was this secret ritual of mine meant to be shared? Would revealing my newfound treasure dilute its magic or, worse, inspire envy or misunderstanding? Caught in this internal tug-of-war, I decided to experiment subtly. Over weekends, when my husband joined me for those early hours, I invited him into my sanctuary, sharing the solace I had discovered. In those hushed moments, I saw his demeanor soften, emerging from the chaos of past weeks where work had consumed our evenings. Slowly he began to cherish those serene mornings too, our laughter dancing in the air as we shared breakfast and exchanged dreams. It was this bond, the laughter, the vulnerability, the growth, that made me wonder whether this small act of kindness and clarity could be a gift, not just for ourselves, but for others. Wanting to share this idea, I took to a popular online forum one night and posed a question in a chat titled Ask Reddit, "What's a life hack so good you almost don't want to share it?" I wrote about my morning ritual, careful to frame it not as a command or an obligation but as a suggestion for those yearning for a little space of their own. What followed was a serendipitous avalanche of responses. People poured in with stories of their own rituals, ways of reclaiming time, or tips to savor the morning before the world demanded their attention. I felt electrified with connection, strangers resonating with the quiet rebellion of choosing to wake up to love and life, not burdens. A woman wrote about her late-night tea and early morning walks, while a young man spoke of the meticulous joy he found in preparing breakfast for his family, intertwining love with fried eggs and crispy bacon. Each anecdote was like a thread stitching our various experiences into a tapestry of shared humanity. Still, the most illuminating response came from a thoughtful user whose simple message lingered in my mind: how do we awaken not just ourselves but those around us? I paused to reflect on it. This was precisely what my mornings had begun to teach me: to acquire wisdom, not just for myself but to nurture in others, to invite them into that space of calm creativity. Perhaps this life hack was never meant to be hoarded but rather to flourish in the connections it could foster. As I gradually let my secret spread, I found excitement in conversations with friends, inviting them to join me for early coffee dates, sharing my early rising practice, and encouraging them to discover their mornings anew. There was a palpable change in every one of us, an impromptu movement driven by shared mindfulness that rippled through our tight-knit circle. With laughter echoing through the early hours and stories unfolding over steaming mugs, I witnessed a blossoming camaraderie and intimacy rekindled. And so, the life hack I once hesitated to share morphed into something far grander, an experience that encouraged vulnerability, creativity, and warmth and redefined the essence of connection among ourselves and others. In this beautiful harmonic dance of shared morning moments, we wove our own intricate narrative, revealing the most poignant truth of all: sometimes secrets hold power, but freely shared wisdom holds even more. As I sit here now, bathed in the dawn's tender light, I no longer hoard the essence of my early mornings but celebrate with gratitude the community it nurtured, filled with the promise of new beginnings, like the sun that rises each day. And as I write this reflection, quietly surrendering to sleep, I know I've opened a door not just to myself but to others' unique journeys, each sunrise a reminder that some treasures are meant to be shared, forever reshaping the lives of those around us. As the first hints of daylight filtered through my window, casting soft shadows on the walls, I felt a profound tranquility settle over me, a quiet understanding of how interconnected our experiences can be. It had been months since I chose to share my secret, a life hack that had transformed my mornings and inadvertently, my relationships. It started as a small confession on a Reddit thread, tagged under Ask Reddit, where users opened up about their favorite secrets and life hacks. My comment had been simple: I wake up an hour earlier than everyone else, and it's changed my life. Of course, I hadn't anticipated the ripple effect it would create. I expected a few nods of agreement, perhaps some disbelief at how such a minor change could yield significant results. But the floodgates opened, and I was caught in a tidal wave of responses. People shared their stories of early mornings, how they found peace in a world that often felt chaotic, how sacred the stillness was compared to the rush of the day to come. At first, I felt a tinge of vulnerability, exposing my personal routine to a community of strangers. Would they understand? Was I laying claim to a secret that was too trivial to be meaningful? But the responses flooded in, each one echoing thoughts I had quietly held inside. Stories of newfound hobbies developed in those quiet hours, like painting or journaling, flourished alongside the feelings of guilt and joy many expressed about wanting more time to themselves before diving into the responsibilities of life. Slowly, I realized that my early mornings were akin to an unpolished gem, and by sharing my experience, I had opened a treasure chest full of kindness and connection. As I engaged with the community, a gentle rhythm emerged through our exchanges. People were inspired to wake earlier not just to chase dreams but to embrace silence, to savor coffee while contemplating their lives before the world's demands encroached on their time. Some created morning routines with family, turning what was once a solitary practice into a bonding experience. Reading through their accounts felt like stealing snippets of colorful lives, weaving my narrative into theirs, forming a tapestry of collective growth. I recall a comment from a woman named Sarah, who shared how incorporating this life hack reignited her marriage. They began waking up together, sharing soft conversations in the bleak morning light that often devolved into earnest laughter, ineffably transforming their relationship. There was another user, an older gentleman, who revealed he attended to his garden during those early quiet moments, nurturing life in a different sense, finding solace in the blooming flowers that awaited him as the world awoke. Yet, beneath the exchanges of inspiration lay something deeper, a shared understanding that life holds profound beauty in stillness. With each story that unfolded, I felt the walls I had unknowingly built around myself begin to fracture. I had always been one to enjoy my solitude, scavenging for pockets of time to breathe before buzzing phones and demanding schedules came crashing in. And perhaps I had feared that opening those sacred doors would lead to chaos and noise, leeching away the personal serenity I had so cherished. But as strangers opened their hearts in response to my simple revelation, I realized how wrong I had been. As the comments continued flowing in, I decided to organize an early morning meetup in our local park. It felt like an uncharted venture, but curious optimism thrived within me. To my surprise, dozens of people showed up, some I recognized by their usernames, others who I would only know for that brief moment in time. We gathered like old friends at the edge of a sprawling green oasis, a burgeoning community nurtured by the dawn's embrace. With coffee in hand and sleepy smiles on our faces, we shared our stories, forging connections I hadn't considered possible. Every cup raised was a toast not just to transformation but to the unity of our shared humanity, scratches and bruises in varying degrees merging with triumphs that painted our lives. Days turned into weeks, and as the seasons changed, so did our meetings. Some mornings we'd delve into reflective mindfulness exercises or guided meditation, others were filled with laughter and shared breakfast picnics. I noticed people blooming in ways they had never anticipated. Friendships emerged, and collaborations formed outside of our gathering. One morning, as I inhaled the scent of fresh pastries baking in the sun, I marveled at how this simple life hack had reshaped not only my routine but the essence of so many lives intertwined with mine. Looking back now, those early mornings were more than just a clever trick, they were an invitation to vulnerability, revealing the subtle art of connection and the beauty of shared existence. As I finally close my eyes in surrender to sleep, I allow the memory of those gathered faces to wash over me, a gentle lullaby assuring me that life, in all its complexities, is best lived together. In the silence that follows, I reflect on the responsibilities we hold, not just to ourselves, but to each other. Some mornings I still wake to the solitude I cherish, but now, they carry the warmth of a community that blossomed from a single whisper of truth, with the promise to continually evolve. And as dawn breaks, I remember that sharing treasures can illuminate the depth of life's experiences across the vast tapestry of humanity, each thread woven intimately yet distinctively into a grand narrative of our existence. I had never imagined that constructing a dollhouse would ignite such a simmering conflict between my heart and my conscience, but sometimes the lines between right and wrong blur in unexpected ways. For years, I had poured my evenings into crafting intricate projects, each requiring patience and skill. My latest endeavor was a dollhouse, a stunning replica of our own home, complete with miniature furniture I'd fashioned from scraps. I envisioned it as a delightful surprise for my niece, Lily, who was just beginning to discover the joy of imaginative play. When I finally unveiled it to my wife, Jenna, one warm Saturday afternoon, I expected her to share in my excitement. Instead, I sensed a hesitation in her eyes, a shadow of disappointment that tugged at my gut. To Jenna, this wasn't just a dollhouse, it was a reminder of the children we had been trying to have for over 3 years. It was a painful echo of hope that had turned into sorrow, the dollhouse becoming a silent witness to our unfulfilled dreams. After she walked away, I was left standing in the living room, the dollhouse perched on the table like an altar to my own conflicting emotions. I spent the next few days wrestling with how to navigate this delicate territory. Lily was such an innocent light in our lives, always brimming with energy and curiosity, her laughter a beautiful distraction from our struggles. I could easily envision her joy, radiant as she played with tiny families inhabiting the dollhouse I had designed with so much love. Yet, was it fair to give that dollhouse to her, now knowing it could unintentionally deepen the hurt in my wife? Each night, I tried to compartmentalize my feelings, but guilt would creep in each time I envisioned Lily's bright smile. Jenna and I had our discussions about starting a family, and although they were often laced with hope, they were equally filled with anxiety and uncertainty. The pain of loss was ever present, and I had never seen Jenna more vulnerable than when we talked about what it meant for our future. As the weekend neared, the veiled tension between us grew palpable. I would catch Jenna staring at the dollhouse with a mix of longing and regret, almost as if it had taken on a life of its own, weaving its way into the fabric of our unspoken struggles. Each time she looked away, I felt a pang of guilt, followed by a sudden urge to lock it away, to spare her feelings. But then I heard Lily's laughter echoing in my head, and I could almost picture her tiny hands carefully adorning the dollhouse with her imaginative touches. This created an inner conflict that kept me tossing and turning late into the nights. Finally, it came to a head at dinner one evening. We had both been quiet, lost in our thoughts, when I finally broke the silence. "What if I gave the dollhouse to Lily?" I proposed gently, gauging her reaction. It was like I had flipped a switch. Jenna's eyes snapped to me, fraught with an intensity I hadn't seen in days. "Is that really what you want?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, loaded with an incredulous sting. "Can it be both? Can it be a gift for Lily? But also a reminder that we can still create happiness?" I tried to explain, though each word felt heavier than the last, as if I were trying to lift the weight of our unfulfilled expectations with flimsy proposals. "No, but it means something different for me," Jenna replied, her voice breaking ever so slightly. There it was, the truth unveiled. It wasn't just about the dollhouse, it was about what it represented. I finally understood, it was a connection, a vision of familial joy. I watched the gravity of the moment settle between us like dust in a sunbeam. The more we talked, The more I realized that perhaps it wasn't merely an AITA scenario, it was about understanding, empathy, and navigating the tender landscape between love and loss. In the days that followed, I found myself standing before the dollhouse with a new perspective. I decided to give it to Lily but framed it differently. I crafted a small card to attach, explaining how it was built with love that could be shared, allowing Jenna to be part of that joy, yet giving me the strength to watch her smile grow brighter as our niece played. When I finally presented it to Lily, the sheer delight in her eyes made the choice worthwhile. Yet in the back of my mind, I knew that this dollhouse would always stand as a subtle reminder of our journey. It turned out that many months later, as I gifted another project to our niece, I was surprised by a simple email that Jenna sent after one of her late-night musings. "Remember that dollhouse? Lily still plays with it and loves how it looks just like our house," she wrote. "Maybe we can make that dollhouse a reality someday." And in that moment, the ache we had lived with seemed a little less heavy. The illusion had transformed into a dream, reminding us both that love, in all its forms, was something still worth building. The flickering light of the candles danced on the walls of our living room as I sat back in my chair, reminiscing about the work I had poured into that dollhouse. Each miniature detail represented not just a collection of wood and paint, but the fragments of our life together, the cozy living room with its tiny couch and absurdly intricate wallpaper that Jenna had picked out, or the kitchen with its miniature utensils that reminded me of the countless evenings we'd spent cooking side by side. It was here, in this quiet space, that I began to value those memories even more as a reflection of the love we had built amidst the uncertainty of our earlier years, a true testament to resilience. As I sipped my tea, I thought about that email. Hearing that Lily, my niece, enjoyed the dollhouse so much reignited a flicker of warmth in my chest. It felt incredible to know that the labor of love and creativity had not only honored mine and Jenna's story but had also bonded Lily with the very essence of our lives. She was transforming those memories into her own adventures. It was a bridge connecting the past and the present, reminding us that happiness could still bloom amid the challenges. Yet, as night settled in and the stars blinked into existence outside, the familiar sensation of guilt drifted back in, like an unwelcome guest at my door. Did I make the right decision by giving the dollhouse to Jenna and not to Lily? Though initially, it felt right to honor my wife's role in my life and the sacrifices she had made, I couldn't help but feel that perhaps I'd robbed Lily of something special. Did I inadvertently create a schism between their relationship, where my decision perhaps felt like an unintentional rejection of her place in my life? Jenna, perceptive as always, sensed my unease. She slipped onto the couch beside me, her warm presence shifting the air to a more comforting space. "You okay?" she asked quietly. Her voice was laced with a gentle empathy that made it easy to confide in her. The steady rhythm of my heartbeat seemed to sync with the flickering light of the candles as I let out a heavy sigh. "I've just been thinking about the dollhouse," I admitted, my voice almost a whisper against the backdrop of the softly crackling flames. "I hope I didn't make the wrong choice by not giving it to Lily." Jenna smiled knowingly and took my hand, intertwining her fingers with mine. "You gave her something even more valuable than the dollhouse," she replied softly. "You gave her the example of building a life filled with love and creativity. You showed her that our family can create and share beauty, and that she can dream of building something of her own one day too." Her words washed over me like the gentle embrace of a wave, reassuring me that our decision was not only justifiable but also imbued with a depth of understanding that transcended simple material gifts. It was an investiture, no longer a mere dollhouse, but a symbol of our shared journey, intertwined with the hopes we had for our own family as well. The next morning struck with the warmth of a new promise, and I found myself compelled to reach out to Jenna again. It was time we brought something to life that would encompass our love and hopes for the future, a project that could merge my skills and our dreams, into something tangible. We bounced ideas back and forth across the breakfast table, laughter slipping out between bites of toast, imagining a new dollhouse, this one a miniature embodiment of everything we envisioned for Lily, but with our fingerprints all over it. Weeks sped by, and slowly but surely, as if we were crafting our story one step at a time, the dollhouse began to take shape. "What if we include a tiny version of the tree in our yard?" I suggested during one evening of construction, the air heavy with the scent of sawdust and varnish. Jenna leaned closer, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm as she devised clever ways to incorporate even more details. Every piece of wood we selected, every color we mixed, felt like an affirmation of our love, a quiet promise that the foundation of the dollhouse echoed our values. On the day we finished, we stood side by side, letting the weight of our work seep in as we admired the end result. The miniature dwelling glowed warmly in the light of the setting sun, and it suddenly struck me that we hadn't just crafted a dollhouse, we had built a tangible connection that bridged the love we shared with Lily. We decided to keep it a surprise, planning to unveil it at our next family gathering, where we would finally present a reflection of our journey to the next generation. As I lay in bed that night, my heart felt unburdened at last. The ache I had once felt had turned into something soft and bright, filled with the knowledge that love, especially when shared and woven into the lives of those we cherish, expands beyond what we originally envisioned. In its own unique way, it branches out, like a tree that steadily bears fruit as it grows, and I knew, just as the ideal dollhouse stood as proof of our journey, so, too, did our story continue to blossom with each passing day. Update: several weeks later, after that surprise unveiling filled with delight and tears of joy, Jenna and I received a touching message from Lily. "Thank you for the cozy dollhouse. It makes me so happy. I hope we can always build amazing things together." It reminded us that sometimes, the act of creation is as important as the creations themselves, and the love we pour into these projects only fosters deeper connections with those who matter most. The days that followed were filled with a gentle warmth that radiated from both our home and our hearts, an unspoken promise that we were stepping into a new chapter of our lives together. Jenna, ever the thoughtful one, began leaving little surprises around the house, an unexpected note tucked into my lunch, a small bouquet of wildflowers on the kitchen counter in the morning. It was her way of reminding me that while the past had its weight, the present could still be woven from joy and love. One weekend, we decided to take a trip to an artist's market down near the waterfront. I remember the vibrant colors of handmade pottery and the sounds of laughter drifting through the air as we wandered together, hand in hand. We stumbled upon a stall filled with little wooden figurines, each one hand-carved and painted with such care that they seemed to squeeze their way into your heart. Jenna picked up a small family set, a father, a mother, and 2 children. "They remind me of us," she said, a soft smile dancing on her lips. It was true, they felt like tiny echoes of our hopes and dreams for the future. We purchased them on a whim, and as we carried them back to the car, I found myself struck by the thought that every piece we gathered was another thread in the tapestry we were weaving together. The months slipped by in a blissful blur, and each week, Lily would fill our home with her laughter as she came over to play. The dollhouse had become her sanctuary, and Jenna and I often found her tucked away, deep in imaginary worlds she created with her tiny figurines. I caught glimpses of their adventures, a family picnic with the little wooden parents and their even smaller children, elaborate tea parties hosted by the family of dolls, and sometimes even the family making a trip to the beach in another imaginative play. It was enchanting to witness, like watching a painter fill the empty canvas of childhood's imagination. There was a day I returned home after a long week at work, feeling the weight of the world pressing on my shoulders. As I entered the house, I was greeted by the soft sounds of laughter echoing from the living room. I made my way there, and nothing could prepare me for the scene that unfolded. There was Jenna, seated on the floor, surrounded by colored paper, scissors, and remnants of drawings. And there was Lily, her eyes bright, fully immersed in crafting furniture for the dollhouse they had decided needed upgrades. The sight sent a wave of warmth through me. I stood there for a moment, quietly observing, allowing the tranquility of the moment to wash over me, a testament to the connections being nurtured in our little home. As that evening drew to a close, I couldn't help but think about the journey we had taken, the transitions, the trials, and ultimately, the love that had stitched us back together. With Lily beside her, Jenna looked up and smiled at me. "You have to see what we've made." In that moment, the burdens I had carried felt lighter, and the future stretched before us like an open road. Perhaps the dollhouse was not merely a beautiful construction, but rather a symbol of resilience and creativity flourishing between generations. That night, we gathered around the dining table, sharing laughter and stories, Lily's wide eyes lighting up as she recounted the adventures of her dolls. She was always the mischievous little sister in her tales, and we hung on her every word, savoring the sweetness of her imagination. Reflection on that whirlwind of emotions led me to realize, love, like creativity, is built with both care and time, and sometimes the best creations aren't the ones we see before us, but the memories we craft and the bonds we strengthen. As I watched Jenna and Lily hunched over their paper crafts, I understood that every moment we spent building something together, be it in the form of a dollhouse or in the quiet moments of everyday life, was a precious thread in the rich tapestry of our existence. And as the sun dipped gently below the horizon, casting a warm golden glow across our home, I whispered a silent promise to myself, to always build, to always share, and to never forget the courage it took to embrace love in all its beautiful, messy forms. There's a saying that suggests that things we buy can sometimes end up owning us, and for years, I was a prime example of that paradox, particularly when it came to the most extravagant and frankly ludicrous purchase of my life, a rare collector's edition of a board game. I still remember the day it happened, sitting on my cramped living room couch as I scrolled through an online auction website in search of something entirely mundane, a gift for my younger brother's birthday. I stumbled across an ad for a pristine, complete version of an obscure game from my childhood, the kind that had long since disappeared from shelves, and I could already smell the nostalgic fumes wafting from that box. The board, so vividly illustrated, beckoned me to dive back into a simpler time, and before I could question my judgment, I placed a bid that spiraled far beyond what I had ever intended to spend. It was a heady rush, fueled by memories of sticky summer afternoons and the laughter of friends crowded around a dining room table, yet I virtually locked myself into a cycle of self-deception, convincing myself that this $1,500 piece of cardboard and plastic would unlock not just a trip to the past, but a way to reconnect with my estranged brother, whom I hadn't seen in years due to a falling out that seemed insurmountable at the time. When the package finally arrived, I was overcome with excitement, but that high quickly dissipated as I realized I didn't know how to bridge the chasm that had formed between us since our father's passing. Still, I forced my hand and decided a game night was in order, diligently calling him and inviting him over, convinced the game was a magical portal through which we could rekindle the connection we had lost. To my surprise, he agreed. The evening unfolded with a mix of awkward silences and forced laughter as we set up the game, the pristine board lying before us like a relic of bygone days. As we began, I could see the memories flickering behind his eyes, but apprehension crept in when I realized he was less interested in the game and more in rekindling our deeper conversation, the one I had been frantically avoiding. The joy the game had promised quickly turned hollow, and soon we were disengaged, our minds elsewhere, but as the hours passed, something unexpectedly changed. During play, the childhood banter started to creep back in, the laughter became more genuine, the stress eased, and I found myself realizing that we were no longer just brothers caught in a messy past, but two people longing for a deeper connection. The game didn't mend everything, but it broke the ice, creating a fragile space for us to talk about our shared grief and the seemingly insurmountable rift it had carved in our relationship. By the end of the night, I could see the faint glimmer of hope in his eyes. We didn't leave as best friends, but we had started taking steps back toward being brothers. Reflecting back on that evening, I couldn't help but feel that the board game had been an immense waste of money in many ways, a fleeting attempt to buy back the love I felt I had lost, but maybe, just maybe, it had been worth every penny for the door it opened to something deeper. Fast forward a few months later, we still hadn't fully repaired the damage, there was still a lot of ground to cover, but we were texting more and even planning another game night. And as for the game itself, it now proudly sits on the shelf as a reminder that sometimes the things we think are just wasteful expenses can turn into the most treasured experiences, and perhaps, the biggest waste wasn't the money spent but the years we let slip by before we faced our fears and reached out. So, in a way, that overpriced collector's edition had much more value than I originally perceived, serving not as an anchor, but as the bridge leading back to my brother, a lesson learned in the most unexpected of ways, and one I carry with me every day. As I look at the collector's edition and the joy it sparked, I can't help but reflect on how much I had overlooked in life before that moment. The gamer's console sits nestled next to dusty board games and old comic books, remnants of childhood joys, waiting to be revisited. At first, I thought my nostalgia was merely a longing for the good old days, an escapism from my daily grind as a marketing coordinator for a tech company that often felt more like a cage than a career. I buried myself in work, burying feelings of disconnection, particularly with Ben, my older brother. He was always there during those carefree days, his laughter echoing through the halls of our small childhood home, two boys sharing dreams over pixelated landscapes and stories of heroism. Somewhere along the way, life had swept us into its chaotic current, and our once vibrant bond began to dull. The whole scenario ignited a fire in me. The moment I popped the disc into my console, trepidation tinged with excitement buzzed through me. I thumbed through the instructions, which curiously reopened shadows and memories of our gaming marathons, how we'd huddled on the couch, every victory celebrated with cheers, every defeat met with contagious laughter. In a fit of impulse, I sent Ben a simple text, "Hey, remember that game we loved as kids?" I got it. The silence that followed felt interminable, yet with every passing hour, the anticipation transformed into anxiety. What if he had moved on? What if he didn't want to reminisce about forgotten afternoons spent battling through virtual worlds? It was a cloudy Sunday when my phone vibrated with a response. To my surprise, it was hesitant and filled with nostalgia. "Yeah, I remember. I'd love to come over and play sometime." My heart raced at the thought of reconnecting. Preparations began, a simple cleaning of my apartment and a trip to the store for snacks. The weight of my apprehension lessened, perhaps because I knew I wasn't just preparing for a game, I was preparing for a reunion, a chance to bridge the gaps we had both let widen. The day arrived, clouds giving way to the soft glow of an autumn sun. When Ben finally stepped through my door, the air felt thick with anticipation. He looked a bit older, the kind of age that comes with grown-up responsibilities, but his grin was the same. It was a little awkward at first, small talk peppered with quiet memories, but then, as the game loaded and our avatars appeared on the screen, laughter began to pour out as easily as it had all those years ago. The screen reflected not just our characters, but the brothers we used to be, fearless and united against any challenge. Time melted away as we navigated the game's world, reliving old strategies and sharing stories from our lives, each tale reconnecting pieces of our diverged paths. The more we played, the lighter the conversation became, peeling back layers of hurt, disappointment, and misunderstandings that lingered between us like an unspoken truce. I could feel my heart swell as nostalgia danced in the air, wonder replacing the sorrow of neglected years. In that moment, no overpriced game could feel like a waste, it had become the undeniable catalyst for healing. And with every level we conquered together, we also conquered the past, transforming it from a burden into a shared journey, something to be appreciated rather than regretted. When we finally stepped away from the screen, it was dark outside, the only light coming from the moon hanging silently above us. I could sense a change in Ben, a weight lifted that he didn't even know he was carrying. We sat side by side, finishing off the last of the snacks, our earlier inhibitions gone, our laughter echoing in the cozy silence. In the days and weeks that followed, our Wednesday night gaming sessions became something we both looked forward to, a rekindled tradition. Each week, we navigated through new worlds and battled countless foes, each session solidifying our connection further. I realized, in those quiet moments of gaming and sharing, that it wasn't just about escapism. It was about allowing ourselves to be vulnerable again, to open doors we thought were forever shut. Ben and I began to share more about life, our struggles at work, relationships, and the hopes we had for the future, the laughter transforming into heartfelt conversations we had long neglected. As I now sit here recalling all of this, I recognize it wasn't just the game that was overpriced, but the years we let slip by in silence. Yet how beautifully ironic it was that a seemingly trivial purchase had sparked the most precious gift, it had led us back to each other. The lesson, indeed, was invaluable, a reminder that sometimes, in the chase of adulthood, we forget to invest in the relationships that matter most. So here I am, the collector's edition game now more than just a forgotten relic, it's a bridge to shared moments, a reminder of how time can be reclaimed. As I hit the lights and settle down for sleep, I can't help but smile, feeling grateful for what once seemed like a waste of money transformed into a treasured investment in love and laughter. And perhaps it's appropriate that I leave this story, not in solitude but with a broader message. Sometimes it takes a little push, a reminder, a ridiculous purchase, to face our fears, reconnect, and revive the bonds that make life worth living. Update, just yesterday, Ben texted me, a simple message that brimming with excitement. Guess what? I found an old console in the attic. Let's have a retro game night next week. And as I felt the flutter of anticipation spark again, I couldn't help but think, sometimes, it's the simplest of things that remind us of the biggest joys, often hiding in plain sight, waiting patiently to be rediscovered. As I sat on my couch, my phone still warm from the recent text, I couldn't shake the anticipation swirling in my chest. Ben, my brother, and I had spent countless hours lost in the worlds of chunky pixels and vibrant retro soundtracks, our laughter echoing through the living room as we battled pixelated monsters and solved puzzles together. Those golden days slipped away, buried beneath the weight of life's demands and the silence that had stretched between us over the years, a silence that seemed to expand the longer we avoided acknowledging it. But now, with his simple invitation, a door to the past nudged open, and I felt a wave of warmth wash over me. I could almost hear our old melodies, the triumphant victory music from that one game that had always been our favorite, the soundtrack of childhood. It beckoned me, coaxing me out of my present worries and back into those carefree moments where nothing else mattered but the next level. The week leading up to our retro game night felt almost surreal. I scoured online marketplaces for vintage snacks to recreate that nostalgic atmosphere, the cheesy puffs and sticky sweet sodas we used to consume in careless abandon. With each item I ordered, I felt like I was piecing together a time capsule, a small celebration of all we had, and all we almost lost. Occasionally, I would replay our last encounter in my mind, the unspoken words hanging in the air laden with years of unshed tears and frustrations. I could hear my own thoughts, criticizing myself for letting so much time slip away even as I felt the tight-knit fabric of our bond beginning to mend, one thread at a time. Finally, the day of the game night arrived. I prepared the living room like a scene out of one of those cheesy romantic films, couch cushions tossed aside, the old console hooked up to the TV, and munchies laid out in carefully curated chaos, just like the good old days. When Ben showed up, a slight nervousness tugged at my stomach. What if the years had changed him? What if awkward silence replaced the laughter? He walked in, his eyes darting around as they landed on the setup. "You went all out, didn't you?" Ben laughed, a sound I had missed so dearly, and just like that, the tension eased. As we sat down on the floor, surrounded by the familiar scent of cheesy snacks and the glow of the screen, I felt the years peel away. We started with a game, and I watched as he instinctively placed his hands on the controller, a glint of competitive desire sparking in his eyes. I remembered this. I remembered him. We fell into a rhythm, laughter bubbling up freely as we shared stories about our lives, his exciting new city adventures and my mundane workdays, but what mattered was our willingness to share once again. I could feel the crack forming in the wall we'd built, our words smoothing the edges of misunderstandings long past. "Do you remember?" he would ask, his voice trailing off like a nostalgic melody, and I'd smile, reminding him of the time we lost our save file on a particularly hard level and how we wept for hours over pixelated losses. Hours passed as the night slipped away, each round blurring into the next, our collective laughter filling the air like music, enchanting and bittersweet. Shadows lengthened as we explored past worlds long forgotten, but every level we conquered felt like not just a nostalgic journey of pixels but the beginnings of a new era for us. At one point, I looked over at Ben as we both burst into laughter over an inside joke from a long-lost game. It brought tears of joy to my eyes. I realized that the biggest waste was never the money spent on that collector's edition, it was the regret of lost time, the bitter reality of so many moments I thought were too late to reclaim. As we finally put the games away, I felt a surge of gratitude crash over me. Ben flopped back onto the couch, his head tilted back while a blissful smile lingered on his face. "We should do this more often," he said, and it struck me as both a suggestion and a promise. I nodded, feeling the warmth of connection wrap around us, knowing that we'd let this night become a new chapter, the kind I had almost forfeited through years of silence and distraction. I finally understood the true value behind that wasteful purchase. It wasn't the game but what it led us to, the reclaiming of time, the rediscovering of bonds. "How about we make a plan for every month?" I suggested, my heart racing at the prospect of future adventures and memories waiting to be forged. The conversation flowed seamlessly from there, possibilities unfolding like a blooming flower. And as I got up to grab more snacks, the sound of his laughter still echoing in my ears, I felt light and optimistic, a grounded sign that the burdens of the past would not define us. Sometimes, it turns out, in the most unexpected corners of our lives, we find threads of connection waiting to be woven anew, just waiting for us to take a leap and reach out, echoing the broader message that life should be lived, explored, and above all, shared with those we love. Update: since that magical night, Ben and I have instated a regular gaming evening, retro games, new releases, and even board games to shake things up. With every session, we laugh louder and talk deeper, and on a whim, last month, we even invited some old friends to join us. Suddenly our humble living room felt like a reunion of sorts. I often think how that one impulsive purchase opened the floodgates of joy, helping us reclaim not just our relationship but the essence of what it means to share moments together. Sometimes, the things we dread, the conversations we put off, can become the brightest chapters in a story we're still writing. And while we've had our challenges, I know one truth for certain: it's never too late to start anew, one game, one laugh, one memory at a time. I still remember the summer of 1998, the air thick with humidity and anticipation as I sat at my family's clunky desktop computer, the faint whir of the fan mixing with the sounds of cicadas outside my window. I was 14 then, navigating the tumultuous waters of adolescence, and computer games were my escape, my safe haven from the befuddling maze of high school drama and insecurities. The game that sticks with me most is a whimsical little thing called Myst, an adventure that stretched my imagination like never before. Immersed in its elegant, surreal landscapes, I found places that felt more real than my everyday life, each click exploring a new dimension of intrigue and mystery. But it was more than just pixels and puzzles, it became a means of connection, a bridge to my brother Adam, who was 3 years older and often wrapped up in his own world of teenage angst. He would sit beside me, offering guidance when I got stuck or simply sharing his newfound theories about the game's story, our bond deepening with each island we discovered together. It wasn't long before the game began to mirror our real lives, each quest delicately paralleling our unfolding relationship. Yet, when adulthood began to call Adam away to jobs and responsibilities, I noticed a gradual, almost imperceptible shift. Weekend gaming sessions dwindled, often replaced with his late-night shifts at the gas station or hangouts with friends. I felt an unshakable sense of loss, like a favorite book closing after the final chapter. One rainy evening, when solitude wrapped around me tighter than ever, I revisited Myst, hoping to recapture that ephemeral magic. As I navigated its quiet halls and stunning vistas, I was struck by the changes in me, and the realization that the game wasn't just an escape, it was a story about connections, about journeys taken with those we cherish. After completing several islands solo, I decided to reach out to Adam. Over text, I invited him to jump back into the game with me one weekend, hoping to rekindle a piece of the childhood camaraderie we once had. Much to my utter surprise, he replied almost instantly, his excitement ringing through the words as he recalled our adventures together, and just like that, we planned a gaming marathon for the following Saturday. When that day finally came, there we were, side by side once again, uncanny echoes of our younger selves filling the living room as laughter and strategy flowed freely. As we explored a world built on connection, I realized that sometimes, life's greatest quests are those that bring us back together. In the end, Myst was more than a game. It was a reminder that bonds can fray but never truly break, provided we're willing to return to the roots of our connection. It was comforting, the way we fell into that easy rhythm of conversation and cooperation, the game serving as a catalyst for conversations we didn't even know we needed. As I sink back into that familiar world, I can't help but look forward to what mysteries await us, both in the game and in our lives. Update: after that weekend, we ended up making it a monthly tradition, turning our gaming sessions into deeper conversations about life, dreams, and the things we were too uncertain to voice otherwise. Sometimes, we still get lost in the world of Myst, and every time, it feels like we are unlocking not just virtual treasures, but also the lost pieces of our relationship. It may seem trivial to some, but to me, it was a reminder that sometimes all it takes is a simple game to stumble across the hidden depths of love and connection. As the months rolled on, our monthly gaming sessions became more than just a ritual. They morphed into a safe haven, a pocket of escapism amidst the chaos of our busy lives. I started to notice nuances I had previously overlooked, like how Sarah would lean slightly closer whenever we entered an especially captivating area of Myst, her eyes lighting up with a childlike curiosity that made my heart swell. It was in those seemingly insignificant moments that I understood how deeply intertwined our lives had become. We'd share stories from our childhood while solving complex puzzles, often losing track of time, and in those exchanges, I felt a sense of renewal, as if we were rediscovering each other all over again. But one evening, after a particularly intense session exploring the intricate landscapes of the game, Sarah surprised me with her vulnerability. "You know," she started softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "this game. It reminds me of how much I've been running away from my past." I paused, the glowing screen illuminating her face, casting shadows that danced with the flickering images. My heart raced, and a knot formed in my stomach because I knew her past was a tangled web of heartache and loss, an unspoken shadow looming over our relationship that we had never discussed directly. Encouraging her to share, I shifted closer and squeezed her hand gently. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice steady, though I felt the weight of her words hanging in the air like an unseen fog. She inhaled deeply, as if gathering the courage to traverse this new terrain. "I think," she began, her gaze drifting to the screen, "that I've been afraid to get lost in something real again. I felt that with you, but there's a part of me that still feels like I have to keep one foot out, just in case." Her admission hung there, raw and vulnerable, and I felt an intense urge to reassure her. "You don't have to be afraid with me," I said earnestly. "I'm here. We're in this together." I could see the flicker of doubt in her eyes waver like the flame of a candle, but still, she held back. The evening drifted on, the world of Myst fading away as we navigated through our own emotional landscape, a puzzle far more complicated than any game could present. Over the following weeks, we began to peel back the layers of our histories during these gaming nights. We made it a point to share not only our dreams but also our fears, pondering the choices that led us down our respective paths. Each session felt less like an escape and more like a step toward understanding each other. I recounted my teenage insecurities, how I'd grappled with acceptance, the sting of feeling like an outsider even in my own friend group, while she shared about her family dynamics, the pressure to succeed, the fractures in family ties that had scarred her trust. As our screens displayed vibrant worlds filled with mystery, we delved into darker corners of our hearts, discovering fragments of ourselves we had kept tucked away until now. Then one night, after a particularly spirited gaming session, I noticed something in Sarah's demeanor. She was quieter than usual, her brows furrowed as she stared at her reflection in the screen, the light casting a strange glow on her face. "What is it?" I asked, concerned that maybe I had pushed too hard. She took a deep breath, breaking the spell of silence. "I think I'm ready to confront my past," she confessed slowly, almost reverently. I could feel my heart race, an odd mixture of fear and pride surging through me. "But I need your help." My stomach fluttered, I nodded without hesitation, eager to support her. "Absolutely, whatever it takes." Little did I know, this commitment would lead us down a road of exploration and catharsis neither of us had expected. We started to create a vision board that illustrated our ideal future and goals, using gaming metaphors to articulate adventures we wanted to embark on, healthy relationships we wished to build, and experiences we wanted to explore together. Eventually, after months of navigating these intertwined journeys of healing, we decided it was time for a tangible adventure. We planned a real-world trip to a nature reserve, an escape as far from screens as possible. It was during that beautiful weekend, under a vast canopy of stars, that we engaged in our most profound conversation yet. Sat around a campfire, we spoke about our expectations of love, the way we envisioned our lives together, and the importance of addressing our fears rather than escaping them. As the fire crackled and the night enveloped us, I finally felt the full weight of Sarah's trust in me, and I understood that the foundation we were building was not a simple one, it was grounded in the courageous act of vulnerability. Months passed, and as I sit here reflecting on that decade-long journey, I realize how deeply intertwined gaming and life have become for us. It's incredible to think that what started as a way to escape ended up being a gateway into deeper connections, a means to confront fears and share dreams. I still don't have all the answers, but I do have her, and that suffices for now. Update: with our newfound understanding, we are considering starting a blog together focusing on mental health through the lens of gaming and storytelling, sharing our experiences and perhaps helping others see that sometimes the most healing adventures can be found not just in the virtual realms, but in the heart of the connections we nurture in the real world. The idea of starting a blog together was something we tossed around casually at first, as we sat comfortably on our couch, our old computer booted up, with the familiar sounds of mist echoing softly in the background. It felt almost surreal how much had changed in our lives since that fateful weekend when I had reintroduced her to the world we used to escape into as teenagers. We previously filled our days with unrelated chatter, but now, our conversations bled into something richer, more profound, each word punctuated by shared laughs and silent understanding. As the months went by, we wrote notes after our gaming sessions, capturing snippets of our thoughts and feelings, like how the island's puzzles made us question our own obstacles in life or how our collaborative approach to the game mirrored how we wanted to face challenges together, in the real world. It was during one of those late-night gaming marathons, as I failed to solve a particularly tricky puzzle, that it dawned on me just how much our bond had grown. She gently reminded me that even in our struggles, there was always a way to approach things from another angle. Her calm reassurances and the way she tilted her head in thought while gaming made my heart swell, and I realized how lucky I was to have her by my side, a partner not just in this moving virtual world but in this unpredictable, beautiful life. We finally settled on a name for the blog, Realms of Reflection. It resonated deeply with us, encapsulating the idea that gaming isn't just about escaping reality, it's also about wrestling with our innermost thoughts and experiences, providing a safe space to explore who we are individually and as a couple. When we published our first post, I remember the combination of excitement and fear swirling within me. The message was simple: gaming could be therapeutic. We shared our journey, the way we navigated through life's challenges, and how our sessions improved our communication and emotional awareness. Each blog entry felt like peeling back the layers of ourselves, exposing our vulnerabilities while inviting others into our shared journey. The warmth of our relationship grew stronger with every comment we received, as fellow readers related to our stories of anxiety and joy, and began to reveal their own tales of love and struggle. It was special to witness the community forming around us, a tapestry woven with shared experiences, making us feel less alone. What truly struck me was a comment from a dedicated reader who thanked us for reigniting her interest in gaming after years of finding it hard to connect with anything. She mentioned how reading about our experiences had encouraged her to pick up an old console and reconnect with her own partner, and the thought that perhaps our words had sparked a rekindling of love in another made my heart ache with gratitude. It was then I knew we were onto something much bigger than I'd ever anticipated. Our online space was not just about us anymore. It had become a vessel for connection, vulnerability, and healing one story at a time. A few months passed, and our blog began attracting a modest following, and with it came invitations to participate in podcasts, panel discussions, and even collaborative projects with mental health organizations. Each opportunity brought both excitement and trepidation. The weight of our stories now had the potential to reach even further. I found myself reflecting back on how a simple game had unearthed so many hidden pieces of my own life, pieces I'd almost lost to the chaos of everyday existence. Being able to share that journey with her was like holding a lamp in the darkness, illuminating the intricacies of our experiences while showing others they too could navigate their unique paths. I'm still navigating my own ebbs and flows, still piecing together the fragments of my fears and dreams, but now I do it with her, and for me, that's more than enough. Then one night, while we sat on our couch in the pale glow of the computer screen, she turned to me. With a twinkle in her eye, she suggested we create a space for people to share their gaming stories, perhaps forming a community where others could glimpse the progression from hardships to healing through the digital and emotional landscapes we explored. I was caught off guard but excited by the prospect. It felt like another adventure eagerly waiting to unfold. As I reached for her hand, the comforting familiarity of that gesture felt historic, like two explorers believing in the infinite possibilities of the paths we walked together. And just as we dove deeper into our ideas, laughter echoing alongside stories of virtual monsters and real demons, and the way we wanted to create meaning through our shared adventures, I felt the weight of everything leading up to that moment lift off my shoulders, making way for a future brightly filled with hope and shimmering with connection. In the end, it all feels seamlessly intertwined, games and reality, light and darkness, fears and comforts. And perhaps, just perhaps, life is a lot like Myst, a puzzle waiting to be solved where every click can lead to an unforeseen doorway, revealing new possibilities while allowing us to form unexpected bonds with each venture. The journey will continue to hold unknowns, but in the midst of it all, I understand I have her, my biggest treasure, my saving grace, and collectively we have people ready to explore their stories alongside us. It all started in the early hours of a Sunday morning when my mind was too awake to return to sleep but too tired to be productive, scrolling mindlessly through my phone like so many of us do. It was during this state of semi-consciousness that I stumbled across a post on Ask Reddit that asked the question, "You're given 1,000,000 of whatever you last Googled. What is it?" I chuckled at the thought and, for reasons I still can't quite fathom, I clicked on the search bar and typed in Eurarachnis, which was a bizarre term I had encountered while researching local spider species for a project I was doing for a community education class. I had just finished writing about the deer that roamed the woods behind my house, but the moment I pressed search, I had no idea I would find myself entangled in something far darker than an overabundance of information about 8-legged creatures. As I waited for the results to load, a twinge of unease settled in my stomach. Imagine my surprise when, instead of an array of educational articles, I was instantly met with a blinding white light that enveloped my room, making everything else blur around me. My heart raced as I rushed to close my laptop, but it was too late. The light consumed me, and for a brief moment, I felt as if I was suspended in air, untethered and disoriented. When the luminosity faded, I blinked, staring at what can only be described as the embodiment of a nightmare, 1,000,000 tiny 8-legged black creatures crawling across every inch of my room. I stood frozen, watching as they surged toward me like a dark wave, their beady eyes glistening with a kind of malicious glee I had never witnessed before. Initially, I thought I must be dreaming, perhaps still caught in that surreal half-sleep state, but the reality turned chillingly clear when I felt the first sharp stab of pain as one of them sank its fangs into my ankle. I bolted out the bedroom door, seemingly outrunning the swarm that was now spilling out into my living room. Panic ignited deep within me as I scrambled to open the front door but couldn't help but catch a glimpse in my reflection, dark circles under my eyes, hair disheveled, a wide-eyed look of utter terror replacing the calm I usually carried. Outside, dawn was just breaking, colors swirled across the sky, yet I felt caught in a living nightmare. I needed help, but who could I call? My friends, while well-meaning, would never believe my tale. My mother had enough on her plate with my father's Alzheimer's making their lives turmoil. Just as despair began to wrap its cold fingers around my heart, the doorbell rang, echoing through the silence of the early morning. With my heart pounding, I inched towards the door, clutching a kitchen knife I had grabbed in a moment of desperation. The only person standing there was my neighbor, Evan, a quiet introvert who kept to himself mostly, but he had always seemed kind enough. "I thought I heard some commotion," he said, his brow furrowed with concern. I opened my mouth, struggling to articulate the chaos of spiders flooding my home, until I caught sight of the creeping black tide pooling around the doorway. In an instant, I closed the door and locked it, now hyper-aware of the fact that I had just isolated myself further with every panicked decision I made. I heard Evan's voice from the other side. "Are you okay? Is everything all right?" I felt a lump rising in my throat, but wrestling it down, I had one coherent thought in my mind: I had to prove to him that I wasn't losing it. Grabbing my phone, I hastily Googled the word Wanarachas again, hoping perhaps for some solution, when suddenly, a staggering realization hit me: there was no information in any world that could offer clarity beyond my own experience. Nymphs of fear had rooted in my stomach. I could hear the small scratches behind the walls as they multiplied, but then it happened. I looked into the search results and found a small, unassuming forum buried deep down the page, one that whispered of old folklore connected to the word. It spoke of the daylights, creatures bound to their half-human hosts, continuing to drain the essence of those they encountered, until reaching a point of suffocating dominance. They required offerings of chaos and fear, feeding into the despair that their presence wrought. I could already feel my mind spiraling, and the anxiety reached a boiling point when I realized, in a painfully ironic twist, that the million spiders had come not to destroy me, but to offer me a choice. Confronting Evan at my door, I stammered out a plea for him to wait a moment while I made sense of the raging storm inside me. Could I really pull the trigger and banish them back to the ether from whence they came? Against my better judgment, I opened the door, bearing my vulnerability but not quite revealing my horrifying truth. As I explained what was happening and how I had inadvertently invited the chaos into my life, Evan listened, unjudging, offering me comfort in the uncertainty. I told him I needed help and asked if he could stay until the morning light brought me clarity, which he kindly agreed to. Slowly, as the sun began to rise and bathe the world in golden hues, I felt a gradual easing in my chest, my chaotic thoughts untangled into an understanding that sometimes, the monsters we fear are born from within us. I learned that the spiders would only thrive as long as I allowed fear to dominate me. With Evan by my side, a sense of camaraderie forming, the shadows of dread broke apart. In that peaceful light, we set to purge my home, confronting the creatures together, using our self-made concoction of vinegar and essential oils. As we battled the swarm, evoking the spirit of laughter, each one we extinguished felt like a shadow lifting from my soul. Eventually, as every final beat of darkness fell into a gentle oblivion, I found peace. A moment of reflection washed over me, revealing that while a million arachnas had threatened to engulf me, they also taught me a lesson in resilience. Losing control can feel terrifying, but sometimes companionship, humor, and the fresh light of dawn can dispel even the darkest corners of one's mind. There's power in vulnerability, and amidst an avalanche of anxiety, it's often simply enough to ask for help. As the day faded into night, and I tried to catch a few hours of sleep, my phone pinged with notifications about the Ask Reddit post I had almost forgotten. I clicked to read the updates, half predicting someone would share their tale, mirroring my own bizarre encounter with chaos. The stories were varied, but none seemed to share the same weight. I posted my own experience, found comfort in the communion of others who'd turned to the thread, and embraced, though I couldn't yet articulate it, the complicated gratitude I felt for Evan, for shedding light on my darkest fears, proving, as a reminder, that we are never truly alone in the chaos that life brings. As I scrolled through the comments, each one a tapestry of lives intersecting at that very moment, I began to reflect on how Evan had unwittingly become a pivotal figure in my journey of self-discovery. I stumbled upon a comment that stood out. Someone had shared their experience of gaining 1,000,000 pounds of pancake mix after Googling best pancake recipes. While it was humorous, I couldn't help but think of the weight of my own request, 1,000,000 hearts. What I had meant as a fleeting contemplation morphed into a profound question of connection. Each heart wasn't just a physical manifestation but an emblem of the relationships I'd nurtured, the loves I'd lost, and the friendships I feared might drift away. Suddenly, the pang in my chest tightened, recollecting my best friend Claire, whose laughter had echoed in my ears just a few months prior but had faded into awkward silences since she had started dating Paul, a new boyfriend who enveloped her world like an unyielding storm. My thoughts danced as I began to wonder, would 1,000,000 hearts be enough to mend that rift? Would I return to our late-night talks over cups of tea, our laughter mingling with the soft rustle of autumn leaves? With the post still open beside me, I began typing a comment, filling it with a mixture of vulnerability and hope. I shared the way I had been feeling about Claire, the unease growing in my heart that I hadn't done enough to reach out and bridge the gap between us. I wrote about how I wished for our friendship to withstand the whirlwind of romance and uncertainty without becoming a casualty of neglect and alienation. An array of replies began to accrue, most resonating with my sentiments, speaking of their own friendships rediscovered amidst confusion and chaos. Yet there was one unexpected response from a user named Heartfelt Owl, who wrote, sometimes a simple conversation can turn things around. How about trying to reconnect? You may find that the bond is still there, waiting for you. That night, as I lay in bed, the pulsating glow of my phone illuminating my face, I felt a tug in my heart, a flicker of courage. What if I approached Claire? What if I could somehow express my feelings without the baggage of guilt or resentment that sometimes accompanied our interactions? The idea spun in my mind like a gentle whirlwind, reaching a crescendo that lulled me into sleep, accompanied by dreams of reconnection. The next morning, the air was crisp and invigorating as I stepped onto my porch, cradling a warm cup of coffee. I took a deep breath, feeling the chill tease at my skin while echoes of laughter danced at the edges of my memory. I pored over the multiple messages I had received, their encouragement intertwining with my intentions, until resolve flooded my heart. I picked up my phone, hesitating only for a moment as I typed, "Hey Claire, can we meet for coffee? I've missed you." Hit send. The weight of the world slipped off my shoulders as I embraced the warmth growing inside me, a stirring anticipation of reconnection. To my surprise, Claire replied almost immediately, her excitement palpable. We decided to meet at our favorite cafe. The day unfurled slowly, the sun weaving through the leaves as I walked to our spot. Butterflies danced in my stomach, mingled with thoughts of all I wanted to say, until I caught sight of her, standing there, beaming as though the past months had vanished in an instant. We enveloped each other in a hug, layers of unspoken words melting away, and as we sat down, it felt as though an entire universe had conspired to bring us back together. The conversation flowed seamlessly, sparking joy, laughter, and the comfort of belonging. In the weeks that followed, I felt lighter, weaving my bond with Claire into the very fabric of my life again. It was as if the 1,000,000 hearts I had envisioned manifested not as a burden but rather as a renewal of the connections I so dearly cherished. Each moment filled with appreciation became a heart of its own, the laughter shared, the weighty discussions of love and loss, the comforting silences when words weren't necessary. In reflection, I returned to that Ask Reddit post occasionally, each time encountering new comments and experiences that amazed me. I thought about the twist of fate that had led me to share my initial story, my vulnerability in a sea of confusion, proving that when we dare to open up, not only do we discover the connections we already have, but we also inspire others to explore theirs. I even came across a comment from Heartfelt Owl, who now shared updates of their own rekindled friendships, radiating similar positivity and warmth, a wonderful reminder to us all. Sometimes all it takes is a brave step forward into the unknown, because our lives are woven together in a tapestry of human connection, more intricate and beautiful than we often realize. Weeks later, I wrote a reflective update in the thread, sharing my experience, the transformation I had undergone, and how Evan's question had set off a chain reaction of connection that I never saw coming. I ended with a piece of advice: you might not understand the hearts you're asking for, but sometimes all you need is the courage to go after what you truly value. Maybe you'll find it much closer than you think. As I hit post, vivid in my mind was the image of Claire's laughter blending with the rustling leaves outside the cafe, a reminder that the chaotic threads of our lives can weave together in ways we least expect, bringing us joy and connection where we feared there would be none. As the afternoon sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue across my cozy living room, my heart felt lighter, as if the burden of uncertainty had been slightly lifted. I sat on my sofa, slouched comfortably against the cushions, still pondering Claire's laugh when suddenly my phone buzzed again. Curious, I picked it up, half expecting further comments on my thread, but instead, it was a message from Evan. I hadn't heard from him since that fateful day of our strange encounter, and the rush of his name pulsed through me like a reminder of a gentle aftershock. "Hey, hope you're doing okay. I read your post. I think you really helped some people." I couldn't help but smile at his words, the warmth radiating through the screen making me feel connected to him despite the miles that separated us. "Thanks, Evan. It helped me too. Maybe we can grab that coffee we talked about? Almost immediately, he replied, definitely. How about Saturday? The memory of that awkward but enlightening day washed over me, and I felt a surge of gratitude for the random day that had somehow stitched together fragile connections in my heart. Saturday arrived faster than I expected. As I stepped into the small cafe filled with the rich aroma of espresso and the gentle chatter of people, the nervous flutter in my stomach was countered by the promise of friendship and support. I spotted Evan at a corner table, his familiar silhouette more comforting than I had anticipated. He looked up, and a wide grin broke across his face as he raised his hand in greeting. "Glad to see you made it," he said, his voice a buoy against the busyness around us. We settled into the rhythm of conversation, sharing stories of our chaotic lives, insecurities, and dreams, weaving through laughter and vulnerable confessions like threads in a tapestry. I learned more about Evan's journey. He too had been a seeker of connection, battling the same chaotic currents of modern life that often left us feeling untethered. What struck me the most was how his perspective mirrored my own, though we were both navigating our respective storms. It was a soothing realization. Our conversations flowed for hours until the sun began to dip again, painting the cafe in a soft amber glow. As we said our goodbyes, I felt a sense of closure and kinship swell inside me. On the drive home, I replayed snippets of our conversation, slow and languid. The contentment wrapped around me like a cozy blanket, providing warmth against the chill of the approaching night. I realized that this was what I had been missing, a sense of belonging, a community of souls who understood the madness of life. That weekend transformed into a recurring ritual. Every week, Evan and I would meet at the cafe. Anyone who wanted to join would spill into our circle, growing it gradually, each encounter adding more threads to our intricate tapestry. The chaos that had once felt isolating started to transform into a shared adventure. After several weeks of companionship, I found myself engaged in a deep conversation with Claire one evening, her laughter still echoing in my mind, fueling my memories. "Have you ever thought about the stories we tell ourselves?" she asked, her gaze serious yet playful. I considered her words, realizing the stories we construct are often influenced by our fears and desires, but they are also colored by who we choose to share them with. "What if," she continued, her eyes sparkling with curiosity, "the narratives we create are just reflections of who we surround ourselves with?" The thought sat heavy in my mind, blossoming into something that felt almost profound. We shared a moment of silence, letting the weight of our conversation linger in the air like the scent of freshly brewed coffee. In that moment, with the glow of the cafe surrounding us, a realization struck: the stories we've sewn together over a cup of coffee, delicate yet resilient, were allies against the chaos of uncertainty, and I understood then that we had built something truly special. Weeks later, during a particularly rainy evening, I poured myself a cup of tea and settled down to check the Ask Reddit post again. I was awash with nostalgia as I scrolled through the comments, noting how my simple story had invoked reflections and heartfelt responses from so many. Suddenly, one comment caught my eye. It was a message from a user who shared a similar experience but with a surprising twist. They had followed the same train of thought as I had, reached out to others, and eventually uncovered a hidden talent for writing. "Thanks to that post," they wrote, "I've published my first short story anthology, and it's been a healing process." Chills ran down my spine as I realized how powerful our connections had become, each of us acting as stepping stones for one another, guiding those lost in their storms to discover new paths. Inspired, I spent the rest of the weekend reflecting on my own journey, contemplating how I might weave my experiences into a narrative of my own. Although the narratives we tell ourselves may be shaped by fear, the courage to reach out creates bonds that can turn chaos into something beautiful. I began to write, crafting my own story of connection, seeking to share it with all those who were still swimming through their own storms. As I penned the first words, I remembered Claire's laughter, Evan's compassionate ear, and the joy of a shared cup of coffee, realizing that our lives are a collection of stories waiting to unfold, entwined in the laughter and learning that arise from togetherness. And with each word I wrote, I could feel the lightness of connection wrapping around me, reminding me once more that even in the chaos, there is beauty, if only we dare to reach through it. It was a quiet Saturday morning when the email arrived, its subject line gleaming like a neon sign in my inbox: birthday party invite. My heart sank slightly, not because the party itself was unwelcome, but for the title attached to it, Ava's 10th birthday bash. You see, Ava, my only daughter, had been living with her mother since our bitter divorce 2 years earlier, a divorce that had taught me both the depths of heartbreak and the importance of fighting for what is right. We had agreed on shared custody and tried our best to keep things cordial for her sake, but time had dulled the edges of our cooperation. Excitement mixed with unease brewed in my chest as I opened the email. In it, Ava's mother, Sarah, had laid out the details of the party she was throwing at her new boyfriend's house, complete with a rented bouncy castle and a promise of cupcakes that were to die for. I smiled at the thought of my daughter laughing with her friends, but the invitation felt like a bitter reminder of the distance that now existed between us. I hadn't been included in the planning, had no input on who was invited, or, more importantly, whether I would be invited to join the festivities. Memories of exchanges between us about joint decisions flooded my mind, laced with that familiar bitterness. I remembered that time we argued fiercely about what to tell Ava during family discussions, how quickly we'd gone from discussing her future to fights over holiday weekends. I took a deep breath, letting the air settle before replying. "Dear Sarah," I typed, "thank you for the invitation. However, I frankly feel conflicted about taking Ava to her party." I paused and blinked at the screen, wondering if I was overthinking this, my finger hovering above the send button. Would I be the asshole for refusing? Would I be denying my daughter joy? After some deliberation, I hit send, feeling both a thrill of liberation and a hint of regret. In a matter of hours, Sarah replied, her words sharp and dismissive. "You're being ridiculous, Matt. Ava needs to see both her parents celebrating her birthday. You can't keep trying to be a martyr." Her words struck like an arrow, and I fired back an equally heated response, caught in that deteriorating cycle of miscommunication where nothing ever seemed to get resolved. The conflict pushed me into an emotional spiral as I questioned my role in Ava's life. I could hear her laughter over the phone on weekends we spent together, see the delight in her eyes during our shared trips to the park and the thrill of watching movies on lazy afternoons. I wanted to fight for that connection without it feeling like a battlefield, yet Sarah's reluctance to compromise left me feeling vulnerable and unsure. Days passed without further correspondence, and my anxiety turned into a persistent ache in my chest. Each moment spent in silence echoed louder than the last, leaving me haunted by thoughts of Ava blowing out her candles without me there to cheer her on. The night before the party, I lay in bed, wrestling with my choices. My mind raced back to those fleeting moments of happiness we once shared, grasping for a glimmer of hope. I recalled our annual rituals, how we made her birthday a grand occasion, replete with silly games and heartfelt surprises. I longed for us to return to that simple joy, the laughter shared between family, but reality painted a different picture, one of estranged relationships and unspoken grievances. In the early hours of the morning, I finally decided to call Sarah, feeling resolute. I dialed her number, the sound of it ringing echoing like a drumming heartbeat. "Hey," she answered, her voice clipped and guarded. "I know it's early, but can we talk?" I asked, choosing my words with caution. Her sigh broke the silence, a long-held breath released into the phone. We exchanged our feelings, our resentments, an emotional tug-of-war of apologies and accusations, laying bare the path that had led us down this difficult road. After what felt like an eternity of talking, I reached a tranquil point of acceptance. "I want Ava to be happy," I finally said. "I just want to feel included in her life, even if it's complicated." There was a pause filled with vulnerability on the line before Sarah softly spoke, "Let's make sure she knows we're both here for her. You can come to the party, I want her to have both parents in her life." The relief that flooded through me was overwhelming, like a drowning sailor finally surfacing to breathe. The next day, I arrived at the party, unsure of what to expect, my heart pounding not from fear, but from nervous anticipation. As I stepped into the backyard, the sound of laughter enveloped me, and I saw Ava, dressed in a vibrant pink dress, her smile widening as she spotted me. It felt as if time stood still, and in that moment, I knew I had made the right decision. There were still obstacles to navigate, shared custody would always be a delicate dance, but we were trying our best, learning along the way, brick by brick, to rebuild the trust that had been lost. As I watched her blow out her candles, surrounded by friends and family, I realized the most valuable gift of all was the experience of unity, the warmth of love shared, even amidst distance and misunderstanding. A part of me still questioned if I had been wrong in sending that initial email, or if my bravado had cost me opportunities, but in Ava's shimmering eyes, I saw hope, and I knew I was no longer alone in this journey. Update: a few weeks after the party, Sarah and I had started attending a family counseling session. It was one of those stepchild scenarios in the modern age, a tug-of-war between two parents still grappling with recent wounds. Upon recommendation from the counselor, we embarked on this journey together, to communicate better, to understand each other as co-parents. We even laughed about the birthday debacle, realizing it had been a miscommunication wrapped in hurt. feelings. In the end, what mattered was that through our trials and tribulations, Ava was thriving, and it urged us towards newfound cooperation, building bridges rather than walls. The journey was ongoing, but for the first time, it felt like I was no longer standing at the edge, but rather stepping gently onto the path ahead, guided by the laughter of a child who would always remind me of the beauty of resilience and love. As I settled into this new chapter of co-parenting, I found myself reflecting often on those tumultuous months leading to Ava's last birthday. The air in our home had shifted. It no longer felt heavy with unspoken grievances but rather light with the potential for mutual understanding. I vividly recalled the night after we had come to our resolution, how we huddled together in the living room, the flickering candlelight casting warm shadows as we all laughed at old family videos. The laughter of Ava, ringing clear and joyous, was infectious, her innocence a gentle reminder that often our adult worries seem trivial in her world. With her small hand clasped tightly in mine, I realized how simple life could be when it was guided by love and honesty, and I could only hope that this newfound warmth would continue to envelop us as we all navigated our separate but intertwined lives. Despite everything, those moments of vulnerability led to deeper conversations with my ex-wife, Rachel. I had always respected her as a co-parent, but now I appreciated her humanity in ways I hadn't before. Our late-night discussions flowed naturally, each of us peeling back layers of our hearts that we had long held concealed, all because of that one birthday party. It astonished me how a single event, one that had felt so incredibly pivotal at the time, could pivot the course of our co-parenting journey so dramatically. We learned to reach out to each other more, to share our anxieties about Ava's growth, her school, and her relationships with friends. Most importantly, we took turns checking in, not just on Ava, but on ourselves, too. This, in turn, opened a door to discussions about how we wanted to celebrate Ava's next birthday. Instead of leaping into a full-blown party with all the trimmings, we decided to involve her in the planning. One evening, I found an old box filled with colorful craft supplies and, just like that, an idea was born. With a few art supplies and her unfiltered imagination, Ava took to planning her birthday like a seasoned event organizer. I smiled while looking at her sketches of a backyard picnic, whimsical animals made from recycled paper, and an entire theme dedicated to her favorite fairy tale characters. Rachel and I shared fond gazes, both proud and a little amused by our daughter's youthful ambition. We both knew she had inherited our tendency to elaborate far beyond what was necessary. As the day approached, what struck me most was the undeniable camaraderie building between Rachel and me. The only struggle left was to find a suitable day when our schedules aligned, which, surprisingly, we accomplished without any friction, something I would have previously thought impossible. Ava's birthday party arrived, and the day was as enchanting as she had envisioned it. We sat beneath the sprawling oak tree in our backyard, a haven of green and gold light, the air thick with the aroma of freshly baked cupcakes and the sound of laughter. Friends began to trickle in, and I felt a sense of relief wash over me as I watched Ava greet her guests with open arms. That familiar feeling, a blend of pride, love, and connection, blanketed everything that day, allowing me to recall the essence of our family, not the struggles but the resilience that woven us together. As the sun dipped, painting the sky in shades of orange, red, violet, I found myself smiling at Rachel across the yard. In that moment, no bitterness echoed between us. Just the simple joy of shared laughter intertwined with parental pride, a strange yet welcomed friendship that had grown from the ashes of our previous disagreements. When the last guest left, we both plopped down on the grass beside Ava, who had just begun to doze off, her face flushed with happiness. "You think she had a good time?" Rachel asked, her voice a soft murmur punctuated by the leaves whispering overhead. "I think she loved it," I replied, glancing down at my daughter, whose dreams must surely have been filled with whimsical adventures. As dusk settled in, it dawned on me just how much had changed. We exchanged a knowing look, words unspoken but shared between us, an understanding that sometimes miscommunication had the power to destroy and to strengthen. My heart swelled with hope, and in that luminous twilight, I firmly believed that through this journey of vulnerability, forgiveness, and growth, we were continually transforming, not just as parents but as individuals striving to give our daughter the best of ourselves. I looked at Ava, her tiny fingers clutching a party favor, and realized that it was the laughter, the love, and the resilience that truly mattered. The path we walked would undoubtedly have its rocky moments, but it was a road I felt ready to tread, knowing I was not alone. And with that reflection nestled close to my heart, I whispered a silent vow to embrace the unfolding future with open arms and a heart full of hope. Update: just a few months later, life took an unexpected turn once again. Rachel had recently mentioned she was considering moving to a nearby city for a fantastic job opportunity, something she had always dreamed of but hesitated to pursue. Her desire eventually put us in the position of needing to recalibrate our co-parenting arrangement. Yet this time, it felt different. Rather than spiraling into anxiety over potential conflicts, we sat down again, just like before, and talked it through. Rachel expressed her concerns about how a move might affect Ava, and I shared my worries about how it would affect our bond as a co-parenting team. Our open dialogue, now woven through trust, made all the difference. We both welcomed the idea of working together, ensuring Ava felt anchored no matter how far she or either of us traveled. Love may have its complexities, but through it all, I learned the most valuable lesson of all, that understanding and communication were the threads that held our family together, no matter the distance. As the weeks rolled into months, the lessons we learned lived with us, blossoming in the everyday moments of parenting. Rachel and I found ourselves sharing more than just birthday plans. We were navigating the intricacies of co-parenting with a newfound sense of unity. It was during these quieter moments, those unguarded conversations over the phone or the casual exchanges when we dropped off Ava, that I realized our relationship was stabilizing. One afternoon, while the sun poured through the kitchen window, I was prepping lunch when Ava ran up to me, her tiny feet barely making a sound on the polished floor. With a big smile, she held out a crayon drawing depicting a sprawling family tree with Rachel and me as the roots, strong and intertwined, and our branches reaching out to represent her growing circle of friends and family. My heart swelled as I realized how much she understood, even if her comprehension was wrapped in innocence. "See, Daddy? Even if we don't live together, we're still a family," she chirped, her eyes sparkling with belief. I couldn't help but feel gratitude for that childlike clarity, the kind that often eludes adults. In that moment, I understood the importance of fostering Ava's perception of love. She was the lens through which our past struggles were being reframed. Rachel and I decided to introduce a weekly family night, where the three of us would indulge in activities ranging from movie marathons to board games, each session acting as a reminder of our commitment to Ava. As the weeks turned into playful banter and warm evenings of laughter, I started to feel a sense of normalcy that had once eluded us. One evening, after a particularly spirited round of charades where Ava had us all rolling on the floor, Rachel turned to me with a smile. "I guess this is what it means to build a family," she said. There was no hint of bitterness or past grievances, just the simple acknowledgement of what we were creating together. But life, in its unpredictable manner, threw a curveball our way. Rachel received an unexpected job opportunity that required her to relocate across the country. I was taken aback, my initial reaction awash with the fear of change. Ava adored her routines. Would this disrupt everything we had built together? When I approached Rachel about it, my usual calm facade cracked. "How can we maintain this?" I stammered. "What if it pulls Ava between us?" Rachel listened intently, her face a mixture of emotions, reflecting my own fears back at me. The weight of our earlier promises weighed heavily on us both. I could see the reality of her move grappling with our newfound understanding. We took the weekend to exhaustively discuss everything, a process that felt both laborious and liberating as we laid all our concerns on the table. The fear of creating instability in Ava's life loomed large, but the prospect of Rachel's career growth was undeniably an opportunity that was hard to frown upon. Slowly, we began to explore what that transition might look like. It's amazing how the words we exchanged began to heal the initial shock, transforming my apprehensions into conversations about alternating weekends and phone calls. We envisioned crafting a schedule that would prioritize Ava's needs, and here was where Rachel's earlier point about communication shone again. The idea was for her to be rooted in both our hearts, irrespective of geographical lines. With every discussion we had, I felt the fabric of our co-parenting strategy become more intricate yet resilient. The decision was ultimately made. Rachel would take the job, and we would commit to a communication plan that would keep any rift at bay. The weeks leading up to her departure were packed with emotional farewells, open dialogues again, and loads of reinforcement for Ava. I felt bittersweet pride as I watched Rachel and Ava playing together in the park one last time before the move. A fleeting moment of nostalgia swept through me. I thought of all the birthdays, the small squabbles, and those beautiful family nights. "We're still a family, right?" Ava asked innocently, her voice filled with concern. I knelt down, unafraid to share my heart. "Absolutely, sweetheart. No matter where we are." It felt true to the depths of my soul, and she smiled, radiating the reassurance of a child's uncomplicated wisdom. As I drove home that day, the weight lingered, but it felt so different now. Sundays would be our pocket of time to celebrate culture through shared meals, FaceTiming during story time, and sending messages across the miles, maintaining our rhythm. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of clarity wash over me. I could not predict what our family's dynamics would look like moving forward, but I had faith that as long as love anchored us, we would flourish. In the end, distance could not dilute what we had built. Through all the anxieties and adjustments, I knew that understanding, grace, and persistent love would knit us together, no matter the miles apart. After all, family is less about physical proximity and more about the bonds we choose to nurture with each other, and as I lay down that night, I felt grateful for the tangled, beautiful journey we were embarking upon together, knowing that Ava would always be our guiding star, reminding us of the resilience that love inspired. It was a humid summer evening, the kind that clung to your skin with its heat and filled the air with a sense of restless energy that made everything feel a little more alive. My friends and I had gathered in Aaron's dimly lit basement, the kind of place we felt safe in, safely tucked away from the world, where secrets and laughter echoed off the concrete walls. We were all entering our junior year of high school, and for the first time since middle school, we felt grown up enough for a night of truth or dare, with all the bravado and mischief that seemed to come with it. The atmosphere was electric, fueled by the dim glow of fairy lights strung across the ceiling and the hum of our excitement. I sat cross-legged on the worn-out carpet with Liz and Tyler to my right and Tim on my left, my heart racing, caught up in the thrill of the night, uncertainty bubbling to the surface with each round. The dares began innocently enough. Tim had to text his crush a cringe-worthy pickup line, while Liz found herself balancing a spoon on her nose. But as the night wore on and the drinks flowed a little too freely, the dares escalated. That's when Ariel, the often quiet but fiercely intelligent girl who usually sat on the fringes of our group, surprised us all with her growing confidence. She challenged Aaron, who was always the jokester, to kiss the girl he found the least attractive in the room. Everyone can vouch for how ridiculous that was. We all knew his longtime crush was Katie, who wasn't even here. But instead of backing down, Aaron shot a mischievous grin and declared he'd do it. With barely a moment's hesitation, he leaned in and planted a quick kiss on my cheek. The room fell silent, and it felt like the air had been sucked out of us. I could feel my face flush, a mix of shock and something else fluttering in my stomach, and I froze. They all erupted in laughter, but my laughter was hollow, a shell around a growing anxiety that twisted in my gut. I didn't expect the heat of embarrassment to turn into something deeply unsettling as he casually brushed it off and returned to his place among the crowd. A wave of unease rolled through me as the night continued, my friends cycling through more ridiculous dares while I sat fidgeting, trying to shake off the warmth that still lingered on my skin. My mind raced, caught in this internal war. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as a prank while another part was helplessly fascinated by the fleeting intimacy of the moment. That's when Ariel turned to me, visibly picking up on my discomfort. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked softly, her brows knitted with concern. It was a simple question, yet loaded with meaning in a room where honesty was a fleeting currency. I shrugged, forcing a smile, but something in her gaze compelled me to admit more. I didn't expect that. It felt. I don't know. I trailed off, desperately searching for the right words to express how a seemingly innocent dare had spiraled into a tangled web of emotions. Ariel nodded, and I could see she understood in a way I didn't expect. The night wore on, but my mind lingered on that moment. The game fizzled out as people grew weary, and eventually, we found ourselves sprawled on the basement floor, half-heartedly engaged in conversation. As the clock ticked toward midnight, I gathered enough courage to voice my discomfort to the group, hoping to lighten the tension that sat heavily in the air. I mentioned how that dare had stirred up feelings I didn't quite know how to handle, and as I spoke, I saw relief wash over Ariel's face. She must have sensed my need for validation, and when I finished rambling, she was quick to back me up, sharing her own feelings of discomfort over Aaron's boldness. Surprisingly, that shared experience opened a door between us. The others leaned in, listening intently. The laughter that previously filled the room morphed into a collective rumble of understanding, as everyone began to admit to their own moments of awkwardness during the game. I could see Aaron's smile falter, and for the first time that night, I witnessed genuine recognition of his thoughtlessness. Maybe it was the alcohol or just the moment, but feelings of camaraderie flooded our conversation, wrapping us all in its embrace. Some truths were spoken, some dares forgotten, but we connected that night on a deeper level than I ever anticipated. As we left Aaron's house, the night air was cool against my flushed cheeks, and the laughter echoed in my mind, a reminder that even in discomfort, there is a chance for clarity and understanding. Reflecting on it all, I realized that sometimes it takes a moment of absurdity to bring a group a little closer, to allow vulnerability to glitter beneath the surface. A few weeks later, when I saw Ariel again in English class, I noted a wave of reassurance as we exchanged knowing smiles, a small reminder of how that one chaotic game had shifted something within our circle. It had made me think about friendship and honesty in a new light. As I drifted to sleep that night, my heart felt lighter, knowing I wasn't alone in navigating these strange, growing feelings of adolescence. Ariel and I had forged an unlikely bond over a silly dare that taught us both something profound about ourselves and each other. It wasn't just another game, it was a pivotal moment in our lives that bridged into deeper connections and understanding. Anyone bold enough to kiss beneath the veil of a simple dare unknowingly opens the door to vast exploration of emotions, and sometimes that's all it takes for true friendship to flourish. Days passed, and the sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting an orange glow across the quiet suburban streets that felt both comforting and foreign at the same time. The laughter from our last game of truth or dare echoed in my mind like a favorite song, but it wasn't just the thrill of the game that lingered, it was the sensation of Ariel's lips brushing against mine, a fleeting moment that had somehow changed everything. I found myself looking forward to school again, not for the classes, but for the moments shared between us. It was in the cafeteria where Ariel and I sat together every day after that. Her laughter rang clear and bright, almost as if it had a life of its own. We talked about everything, our favorite books, the pressure of grades, and the silly crushes we had. But beneath the surface, a subtle shift was happening. The air seemed charged with anticipation, with unspoken words hanging heavily between us. During a particularly playful lunch, Ariel dared me to serenade her in front of our friends, and before I could think, I stood up, clearing my throat. With a mix of embarrassment and excitement, I improvised a silly love song that drew giggles from the group, but as I looked into her eyes, my heart raced, not just from the dares themselves but from how deeply I was beginning to care for her. That day, as we walked home, I couldn't shake the feeling that what had started as a game was growing into something wonderful, something complicated. Yet, with every shared laugh and every moment spent in her warm presence, doubts crept in. What if I misread the signals? What if, in trying to pursue this uncharted territory, I put our friendship at risk? Perhaps I should keep my feelings buried deep like one of those secrets you whisper into the softest corners of your mind. The turning point arrived on a Friday evening when a group of us gathered for another round of truth or dare. This time, it was different. There was an undercurrent of tension as whispers and teasing glances circulated. I found myself caught between wanting to participate and wanting to protect what I had with Ariel. When it was my turn, I took a breath, eyes darting toward Ariel's reassuring smile, and I chose dare, hoping it might push the boundaries of our friendship just a little further. I dare you to call your biggest crush and confess your feelings. A friend blurted out, and the air thickened instantly. My heart sank, the dare echoed in my mind, reshaping my thoughts into a whirlpool of panic. My biggest crush was right in front of me, sitting just inches away, yet the idea of saying it aloud paralyzed me. Glancing at Ariel, my throat tightened. The group urged me on, the pressure swelling in my chest. I didn't want to make a fool of myself or ruin what we had, but what if this was an opportunity to clarify everything? With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone, dialing without giving it one more thought. I could hear the ringing in my ears as Ariel shot me a questioning look, her eyes a mixture of support and confusion. Finally, a voice answered, fuzzy through my nerves. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my tone light, but all I could think about was Ariel's expectant gaze. I stumbled through the first few lines, but then as we reached an awkward silence, something shifted inside me. "Actually," I said, "you know what? I think I just made a mistake. Because there's someone I really like, and I think I should tell her. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do it." I hung up, adrenaline pumping through my veins, and before I could collect myself, I turned to Ariel, whose mouth hung open in shock. I meant you," I blurted, the words tumbling out faster than I could catch them. The room went quiet, and finally, the silence broke, my friends stifling giggles while maintaining their conspiratorial whispers. Ariel's cheeks flushed a deep crimson, but her expression softened, confusion melting into understanding. I could feel my heart pounding against my ribcage, the weight of the moment pressing down on my shoulders. Time froze as we locked eyes, and suddenly it felt as if the walls around us had melted away, leaving just the two of us suspended in a cosmic bubble of anticipation. "Really?" she whispered, almost as if she were afraid to shatter the fragile canvas of this new reality. For a moment, I considered retreating, to erase my impulsive confession before it could lead to something bad, but instead, I found courage stirring within me. "Yeah, really," I replied, allowing my vulnerability to bridge the defining gap between us, where friendship and something deeper could meet. The air shifted, her nervous smile turned into a beaming one, and suddenly, the tension that had borne itself in that moment began to dissolve. We both laughed, the kind of laugh that radiates warmth, locking away uncertainty and cultivating a newfound depth to our relationship. That evening didn't end in a single dare, it spiraled into a torrent of honest conversations, dreams shared beneath the stars, and the unguarded joy of finally discovering connection. It changed the way we saw each other, not as just friends daring each other, but as two people brave enough to step beyond conventional boundaries, daring to embrace what lay ahead. In the weeks that followed, we navigated the delicate and uncharted territory of being more than friends, connecting not only through playful dares but genuine vulnerability in our interactions. Every stolen glance and nervous touch sent shivers through me, and gradually, the boundary that once defined our friendship melted away into something exquisite and gleaming. Ariel and I became partners in more than just games, we became partners in exploring the intricacies of young love, challenging ourselves to embrace what it meant to uncover intimacy while carrying the sweetness of youth on our shoulders. As the days turned into weeks, I realized that we had ventured beyond those initial trembling steps into a world rich with laughter, support, and understanding, teaching us both that every friendship has the potential to grow and evolve in the most unexpected ways, as long as we have the courage to dare. In retrospect, that game of truth or dare hadn't merely been a game, it became a transformative catalyst for our lives, pushing the edges of our hearts until they opened wide, inviting in the warmth of trust and affection. And just like that, we were no longer just players in a game, but co-authors of a tender story that was only just beginning. The weeks that followed that fateful night were nothing short of a whirlwind. The gravity of our dare had subtly shifted the dynamics of our group, and what was once a carefree circle of friends blossomed into something deeper and more intricate. Every Friday, we gathered at the old tree in my backyard, now a sanctuary of laughter and secrets. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting golden hues that danced through the branches, making the world feel like a secret haven. I could feel the change in the air, as conversations faded into soft smiles and longing glances exchanged between Ariel and me. It wasn't overt, but rather an unspoken agreement that lingered just beneath the surface. My heart was a patched quilt of excitement and anxiety as I started to wonder what it meant for us to redefine our friendship, to cross the boundaries laid out by childish innocence. One evening, with soft twilight surrounding us, Ariel dared me to share a secret, her tone playful but her eyes searching. My thoughts raced. It would have been easy to share something inconsequential, a quirky habit or an embarrassing moment, but the worry still lodged in my throat that our friendship would change irrevocably made me hesitate. Was I ready to lay my heart bare? Finally, I decided on the secret I had kept tucked away. I confessed how that kiss had shifted something inside me. The confession sprung forth timidly, as if it were a small bird breaking free from a cage. Ariel blinked slowly, absorbing my words, and a tender silence wrapped around us like a warm blanket. I held my breath, waiting for her response. After what felt like an eternity, her smile broke into the kind of radiance that filled the space between us with warmth. "I feel the same way," she replied, her voice a soft whisper caught in the evening breeze. Those simple words transformed the air around us, filling it with a sweet heaviness. A mix of relief and exhilaration engulfed me, and suddenly, the tremors of my previous doubts seemed trivial against the vastness of our connection. We moved closer, our shoulders brushing, creating a spark that ignited behind my ribs. The laughter of our friends in the distance faded, giving way to a cocoon of intimacy that felt both thrilling and terrifying. That night marked a pivot in our friendship. We began to confide in each other more, sharing dreams and fears over quiet conversations beneath the stars. In those moments of vulnerability, I discovered layers of Ariel I had never known, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke about her dreams of being a photographer, how she wrestled with self-doubt, and how she found solace in nature's quiet embrace. Life was starting to unveil its complexities, each layer revealing deeper shades of understanding and admiration. However, with the beauty of blossoming feelings also came complications. As the pressure of our new dynamic settled in, I worried with each passing day, what if this bond, so fragile and precious, fractured under the weight of expectations? I watched as our friends, including Jake and Lily, began to notice the subtle shift, their taunts and playful nudges serving as jarring reminders of our transformation. Each time they jokingly nudged us together, claiming we were dating, a prickle of anxiety shot through me. Were we ready for that? One Friday evening, our group took a spontaneous trip to a local carnival, filled with laughter and tangled threads of joy. The air was saturated with the aroma of cotton candy and popcorn, a nostalgic scent I could hardly resist. As we walked through the throngs of people, my heart raced not just from the excitement of the carnival atmosphere but from the undeniable tension bubbling under the surface between Ariel and me. That night, the game we played took on a life of its own. It was no longer about childish dares but about truths we were unprepared to face amidst the laughter. After riding the Ferris wheel, we ended up in a quiet corner away from the jubilant crowd, and Luna, ever the instigator, suggested a game of truth or dare. I could sense the exhilaration dancing in the group as if everyone was holding their breath, unsure of what was to come. When it was my turn, I chose truth, contemplating whether to confront my emotions or cloak them in the comfort of playfulness. I could feel Ariel's gaze on me, searching, as if she, too, were taking stock of what was happening. "Do you have feelings for anyone in this group?" Jake asked, his eyes darting mischievously between us, igniting the familiar tension swirling around our little gang. Time seemed to stretch like taffy, and all the air left my chest. Struggling to breathe, I glanced at Ariel. The secret of our burgeoning feelings loomed over us like a dark cloud, and my heart raced at the thought of confessing what lay hidden beneath the surface. Looking into her eyes, I felt a sudden surge of courage. "Yes," I replied, my voice steady as I held her gaze. "I do." Ariel's breath caught, her eyes widening with surprise tinted with familiarity. The room buzzed with excitement and intrigue, yet it was as if the world around us faded into the background. "And who might that be?" Tara pressed eagerly. "I can't believe it's not me," she joked, but her laughter felt distant. "The truth is," I said, allowing the honesty of the moment to unfurl, "it's Ariel." The shock that settled in the air rippled through the circle, gasps escaping lips and laughter slightly fading as the weight of my confession danced across the charged atmosphere. Ariel's cheeks flushed a delicate shade of pink, and she searched my face for any sign of jest but instead found sincerity gleaming in my gaze. There, in the thick fog of uncertainty, our bond felt palpable, stepping from the shadows into a vibrant light, much like the emerging dawn. To my surprise, Ariel didn't shy away. Instead, she grinned, laughter bubbling up as if a wall of tension had dissolved between us. "I guess we're both in trouble then," she said, her smile wide, plunging us both into a newfound exhilaration that wove its way through our friends. As the last remnants of summer spilled into our lives, we navigated this fresh landscape of connection, our hearts dancing in harmony as we balanced between the playful thrill of the dare and the profound truth of our feelings. The carnival faded into memory, replaced by sleepy afternoons and quiet evenings wrapped in warmth, where we dared to venture further into each other's lives, sharing moments of sweetness, uncertainty, and a sprinkle of inevitable doubt. Months went by, a tender rhythm established beneath the guise of friendship, but as with any journey through uncharted territory, complications began to arise. I've learned that emotions aren't always kind. They can twist into something complicated, gnawing at confidence. We still played our games, but each dare felt heavy with expectation, our flirting becoming a tender dance on seemingly fragile ground. The fear of losing what we had made me hesitant, challenging me to balance what we wanted against the foundation we built. Then came an evening when I couldn't put it off any longer. Ariel and I found ourselves finally alone on the old tree swing, swaying slightly, reflecting on the shared laughter of the past few months. I turned to her, breathless. "What are we doing?" My voice broke softly against the stillness, and she met my gaze with an expression shimmering with understanding. "We're daring ourselves to be vulnerable," Ariel replied, her voice steady yet soft. We talked deep into the night, the stars shimmering above us, and it occurred to me, what began as simply a dare had evolved into something courageous and necessary. We had traversed the tender intricacies of friendship and intimacy, learning to embrace the duality of being both creators and caretakers of our story. In that moment, I wasn't afraid anymore. I wanted the story to continue, with all its complications and beauty, an intricate tapestry woven from our laughter, caution, and daring love. It was neither a clear-cut beginning nor a resolute ending, it was simply the unfolding of what we had dared to explore. Friendship matters, especially when it fosters love, and as dawn broke on the horizon that night, I felt an invigorating rush of certainty. Whatever came next, we would face it together, hand in hand, open to the wild and wonderful journey that lay ahead. And so, as I laid my head down that night, a smile lingered on my lips, breathing warmth into my dreams, knowing whatever shadows danced at the edges of our story would only serve to deepen the bond we had forged, the bond seated in a silly dare that had blossomed into a beautiful connection, as real and tender as we dared to believe it could be. When I sat down in front of my old gaming console that chilly autumn evening, I had no idea that one single quote would lead to a revelation that would change my understanding of friendship forever. I had grown up with gaming as my escape, a comforting ritual from childhood through adulthood. My friends and I had spent countless hours immersed in vast digital worlds, triumphing over impossible odds and sharing laughter filled with our most ridiculous inside jokes. So, when Stephen, my longtime friend, threw out a seemingly random quote during our regular gaming night, something he thought was trivial, a moment of nostalgia, I couldn't help but wonder if I was missing something deeper. We were playing an unnamed game that had become shorthand for our teenage summers, a classic that had shaped our bond. As the main character faced yet another absurd situation, Stephen casually said, "I don't even have to be in the same room to know you're laughing." It struck me hard. How many times had I felt the same way about him, knowing that laughter was a bond stronger than physical presence, particularly when it often felt like our lives were drifting apart in the monotony of adulthood. For weeks after that, I couldn't shake off that quote, replaying it in my mind like a soundtrack of nostalgia. Each time I picked up my controller, the laughter echoed, but beneath it lay a nameless anxiety. I sensed a rift growing between us, meetings became sporadic, and conversations dwindled to small talk that barely scratched the surface of our once vibrant friendship. I couldn't pinpoint why it hurt so much, perhaps it was the unspoken tension of unfulfilled plans or the means of living different lives, as families and careers began to take precedence over our escapades. One night, while the pixels danced on screen and the soundtrack wove between our nostalgic banter, I hesitantly asked Stephen if he felt it too. Silence enveloped the atmosphere like a heavy fog, and for a moment, I feared I had crossed an unseen boundary. Finally, he sighed, the weight of 1,000 unwritten words hanging in the air. He admitted he felt disconnected, as if we were two players in a multiplayer game who had unwittingly wandered off into different maps. It was his honesty that instigated the wave of vulnerability washing over me, and suddenly, my emotions spilled out, my worry about us, my guilt over lost time, how I missed the casual hangouts that felt effortless back in college. It was an odd thing, to expose your feelings like this, especially when you're wired to keep the game face on, but it felt liberating. We spent the next few hours talking, reminiscing about shared experiences, those late-night campaigns and epic wins that felt like they could last forever. Laughter bubbled up freely in between our confessions, as the weight of underlying tension began to lift. There, in that dimly lit room filled with the faint glow of the screen and the comforting scent of takeout, we decided to reignite that lost spirit. We made a pact to carve out time each month to really dedicate ourselves to gaming together again, not just as a means of entertainment, but as a canvas to reconnect with one another. In those moments, I felt a warmth wrapping around our friendship, a reminder that sometimes a single quote can unpack layers hidden during bustling lives and responsibilities. Weeks turned into months, and though our gaming nights were sometimes fraught with the chaos of life, work and personal issues testing our resolve to reconnect, we held on to that promise. As I sit here, reflecting on how that small, seemingly innocuous moment spiraled into a deeper understanding of what it means to truly nurture a friendship, I realize that sometimes you just need a little spark, a whisper of nostalgia to shake things loose. Today, the gaming marathons aren't just about the achievements anymore, they serve as our therapy sessions, allowing us to unload, laugh, and share in the absurdity of our adult lives. It dawned on me that the love and support carried through friendships can be as fulfilling and reinventable as the fantastical realms we escape into. A week later, as if to close the chapter on this rediscovered saga, Stephen sent me an update, a meme that perfectly encapsulated that feeling of gaming together, reminding me of our inside jokes. Attached was a caption, "You may not be in the same room, but your laughter always fills the void." It was more than humorous, it felt reassuring, a touch of light in life's more serious moments. I found myself smiling, knowing that through the world of games and vulnerability, we had unconditionally connected again, evolving our friendship into something richer, all because of one small but impactful quote. As the days turned into weeks following Stephen's meme, the surreal blend of nostalgia and newfound connection lingered in the air like a comforting fog. I would often find myself scrolling through our past chats, reliving those countless nights spent unlocking achievements together, each message a flashback to laughter echoing through our headsets while gaming deep into the night. Life had shifted dramatically since we'd drifted apart, more responsibilities, heavier workloads, life wrapped in its unpredictable chaos, but that little meme seemed to have opened a door back to a place of joy that I thought had been locked forever. One afternoon, I decided to reach out, wanting to explore this revitalized friendship rather than letting it dwindle into another series of missed opportunities. "Hey, want to team up this weekend? I hear they've got a new event going on," I typed, my finger hovering over the send button, a nervous twinge in my stomach. After what felt like an eternity, my phone chimed with a response, "Absolutely. Let's wreck some noobs." The ease of his words washed over me, soothing my anxiety like a balm. As Saturday approached, I prepped my setup, rearranging my desk and ensuring my headset was charged, a mix of excitement and trepidation coursing through me. We met in the virtual arena, our avatars clashing against each other in a fervor that felt strangely liberating. Each victory brought shouts of triumph, each defeat was swiftly turned into a shared joke, and soon, the initial awkwardness melted away like ice under the warmth of the spring sun. The laughter rolled easily, punctuated by quick witticisms that felt completely organic and familiar, and I realized that I had missed him. Between rounds, we chatted about life, drifting from stories of our routines to hilarious anecdotes from the trenches of adulthood. It felt like time had folded back on itself, erasing the distance built by years of silence. Yet, I could still feel the ghost of that unspoken tension lingering, the memories of both good times and regrets hovering in the backdrop, waiting for a moment of acknowledgement. One of our victories led us into an unexpectedly emotional conversation, sparked by a seemingly benign comment about how difficult it is to find genuine friendships as adults. "It's crazy how when we were kids, all it took was showing up at the park to make friends," I said, my voice quieter in the sea of digital banter. His character paused, a rare moment of silence stretching between us as he processed the words. "Yeah, it's like we forget how to reach out," he replied gently, and the sincerity of it struck me like a chord plucked in an empty room. The sentiment hung there, an invisible thread connecting our experiences of loneliness and longing, the struggle of feeling like you're drifting in the currents of life away from those who matter most. That was when I took a deep breath and decided to bare a little of my soul. "You know, after everything, I always thought I messed things up between us. I got caught up in my life and let it take over," I confessed, the words spilling out with a mix of vulnerability and hope. I wish things had stayed the same." I held my breath, waiting for him to respond, silence amplifying my fears. "I felt it too," he finally said, deep and thoughtful. "Life threw us off our game, but I realize it's never too late for a respawn." I chuckled softly, relief settling in my chest. We spoke more about our drifts apart, the choices that had led us to this moment, and as we did, I could almost feel the shadows of regret ebbing away, replaced by the dawning warmth of understanding. We gradually crafted what felt like a new foundation for something brighter, a mix of past and present that was uniquely ours. Hours melted away into a pleasant blur, and when we finally signed off, the air was heavy with a contentment I hadn't felt in years. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, feeling that elusive ache of nostalgia not as a sad reminder but as a comforting call to arms. Our friendship was evolving, not just from a single quote but from an entire narrative of recovery, laughter, and connection rebuilt. I couldn't help but wonder where this journey would take us next, embracing the uncertainty with hopes for shared gaming nights, inside jokes, and the sweet bond that comes from facing both the virtual and real worlds together. Without a doubt, we had found the portal back to each other, and I was eager to discover what adventures awaited us beyond the screen. A week later, I received another message from Steven. "Hey, I just found a bunch of old clips of us playing. Let's make a highlight reel of our epic moments." I couldn't help but laugh. Through all the chaos, he was still the same guy who loved to make memories. "Count me in," I replied, feeling that familiar thrill of excitement. As I settled down to sleep that night, the gentle buzz of anticipation swirled through my mind like the sound of levels being completed, and I realized sometimes it takes a simple meme to reignite not just friendships, but a journey of rediscovery. The next morning, I could hardly contain my excitement as the thought of revisiting those old gaming memories danced in my mind. When night fell, and the rest of the world drifted into its slumber, I found myself in an all too familiar spot, nestled in my comfortable chair, a soft blanket draped across my legs, and the glow of my computer screen illuminating the room. I opened the chat thread with Steven and felt a surge of nostalgia as I scrolled through our past conversations, a digital scrapbook of laughter and togetherness. Memories flooded back, those long nights spent battling virtual foes, the passionate debates over strategy, and the gleeful moments when we pulled off some ridiculous play against all odds. Our gaming sessions had become not just about achieving victories but about bonding, about being there for each other in a way life often made challenging. We were two college kids trying to navigate the intricacies of adulthood, and gaming became our sanctuary. The memory of Steven's infectious laughter echoes in my mind like a cherished tune. It reminded me of how, beneath the surface of our playful banter, we had shared vulnerabilities about our futures, our fears, and often our loneliness. Okay, so what clips do you want me to start with? I typed eagerly, and moments later, Steven sent a slew of hilarious highlight snippets, reminding me of our best moments, the time we had surprisingly defeated a notoriously tough boss after countless tries, his triumphant scream followed by an eruption of laughter, and the image of my character tumbling off a cliff yet again because my fingers weren't keeping up with his over-the-top strategies. As I began piecing them together, I could feel the exhilaration building, a project sparked by shared history rather than just pixels and gameplay. It was as if every clip reanimated the emotions we'd packed into those virtual worlds. I sat back, reveling in our camaraderie, acknowledging how these memories had woven themselves tightly into the fabric of our friendship. Once the compilation started to take shape, I felt a surge of pride, a creation born from our journey. "You've got to see this when it's done," I told him, and he responded with an enthusiastic emoji-laden message expressing how much he was looking forward to reliving those moments. We quickly set a date for the unveiling, and I could hardly sleep that night, my mind replaying each clip as I envisioned our reactions. The day of the highlight reel reveal arrived, and I felt a familiar thrill as I joined our call. Steven's face lit up when he saw the title on the screen, Epic Adventures, The Best of Us. I pressed play, and the sounds of our younger selves filled the air, laughter mixing with the background music I had chosen to accompany our exploits. We found ourselves lost in the same essence as before, those moments that felt so expansive, so freaking monumental in our lives. We were so bad. Steven howled as a clip had us both running in circles, completely oblivious to the task at hand. I replied lightheartedly, "No, we were just misunderstood geniuses." It was a simpler way to describe how we had stumbled through everything with unwavering determination. As the reel reached its climax with a montage of our best moments, I looked over at Steven, his excitement palpable. "Look at us," he said, grinning from ear to ear, "I missed this." Those words settled deeply within me, resonating with an unspoken truth I often felt but could never articulate. Our laughter lingered long after the video ended, and soon enough, we found ourselves diving into conversations that felt deeper, more emotional, sharing what we were currently facing in life, the challenges and uncertainties, the struggle between dreaming big and the weight of reality. It was in those conversations that I felt us shift from just friends into a true support system, the kind forged through years filled with shared laughter and tears, victories in games leading to victories in life. As the night dwindled, we promised to continue our collaborations and reconnect with the joy of not only gaming together but sharing our journeys. I felt a reconnection echoing in my heart, reaffirming that while life would always take us through different paths, some bonds would always guide us back home, illuminating the way in moments when we feel most lost. And as I crawled into bed, thoughts tinged with excitement and gratitude, I realized that sometimes it takes a journey through outlandish adventures in a virtual world to find your way back to a cherished friendship, reminding you that laughter truly fills the void. Weeks passed, and with every video call, every recorded session, and every shared meme, the bond between Steven and I only strengthened. It was as if we were weaving a new tapestry from the old threads of our friendship, occasionally laughing about how ridiculous it felt to navigate this adult life together, holding on tightly to our shared love of gaming, a love that had effortlessly bridged the gap time and distance had created. The thrill of recounting our digital quests inevitably led us into discussions about our personal quests too, the stories evolving into sincere conversations about our hopes, dreams, aspirations, and often, what we feared losing along the way. Then, just as life can often take an unexpected turn, I received a message that made my heart drop. It was from Steven, but this time it was different. It was an apology, tinged with grief. His father had fallen ill rather quickly, and the family was facing uncertain times. My heart sank. I had seen what health struggles could do, the emotional toll it bore on both the individual and their closest people. I felt a sense of helplessness wash over me, but I knew that sometimes, the greatest support one can offer is simply being there. I messaged him back, "I'm here for you, Steve. Whatever you need, I'm just a call away." That message felt insufficient but was the lingering echo of our camaraderie from years past. I knew just offering my presence would mean something, even if I couldn't wave a magic wand to fix it all. As the days rolled on, Steven went quiet, and doubt tugged at me, wondering if I was really being supportive from far away. In moments of confusion, I started remembering those chaotic gaming nights filled with joy, humor, and companionship. I realized that perhaps the very essence of our bond was precisely what he needed, fundamentally rooted in just being present. Eventually, I received a brief message: "I'm okay for now, just finding my way through." Knowing he'd reached out gave me a spark of hope. I decided to take the initiative and scheduled a gaming night. I sent him an invite to play our favorite game once again. "We can't let ancient heroics fade. Your laughter is the quest I need to complete," I texted jokingly. He accepted. That night felt familiar, and despite the dark cloud hovering above any concerns about health, we embarked on our digital adventure. As we slid back into our groove, the playful banter returned, notes of laughter mingling once more as we battled side by side, perhaps proving that laughter is more than just a response. It can heal and provide strength in moments of uncertainty. And at the end of the evening, as we faced our virtual enemies, I felt something I hadn't in a while. Despite the world outside being tumultuous, within that pixelated universe, we built something special again, re-establishing that vital connection. It was calming and a reminder that amid life's unpredictable seasons, friendships forged in laughter can often become a lifeline in the darkest times. A few weeks later, before another session, Stephen reached out saying he felt grateful for that small reprieve we'd gifted each other, claiming how that night had surprisingly helped him cope with everything happening around him. "It's strange," he confessed, "how just revisiting old memories can remind you of who you are." I couldn't agree more. Our lives had intertwined so beautifully that these gaming moments, once a form of distraction, had become a surface to resource each other, strengthening our resilience. This was no longer just about a game or mere laughter. It was a tapestry woven with care, memories, support, and love, reminding us that no matter where life tried to lead us, we'd always find our way back to one another, bridging any gap, laughing together in those chaotic yet magical virtual worlds. And eventually, I knew we'd create new memories, just like that one fateful meme, ushering in new laughter and connection. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I felt assured that with every laugh, every heroic quest, our enduring friendship was its own beautiful victory. It's the kind of story that haunts you in quiet moments, creeping up like the long shadows of dusk before night sets in. As a child, I found solace in the laughter of my friends at the little coffee shop on Elm Street, a place that always felt like home, with its aromatic blend of roasted beans and warm chatter wrapping around us like a comforting blanket. It was a simple life, a predictable circle of mundane joy, until that one evening, everything unraveled in just a heartbeat, leaving a residual ache that I still can't shake off. The moment came disguised as an innocent game of truth or dare. We were a collection of seniors reveling in the fleeting days of high school camaraderie, brimming with carefree energy. Daring one another had always brought us closer, forging bonds that felt unbreakable. But that night, I observed my best friend, Ravi, as he tightened his grip on his trusty phone, the flickering screen illuminating his face with a glow that seemed to carry a hidden weight. When it was his turn, the laughter still buzzing in the air like the last remnants of summer, Ravi chose truth, a decision steeped in our usual banter until suddenly, someone muttered an offhand comment about his girlfriend Amanda, a girl who radiated kindness like sunlight breaking through a cloudy sky. It was offbeat but lighthearted, poking fun at a moment when she had been a bit too giddy at a party, wearing an outrageous chicken costume, and it spiraled into tossing harmless jabs back and forth, the room charged with laughter, yet Ravi's expression shifted so swiftly, it caught me off guard. The playful air turned dense, heavy with unsaid words, and there it was, the flicker in his eyes, a mix of hurt and anger that crackled like a low flame, a precursor to a storm we didn't see coming. He could have laughed it off, we all wanted him to, but instead, he threw caution to the wind and blurted out words that shattered the atmosphere, revealing a dark thread running through his relationships. "Do you know, sometimes I think she's just using me to fill a space in her life. And that chicken suit? I wouldn't be surprised if it was to highlight how foolish we are together." The statement hung in the air, thick and suffocating, every laughter instantaneously dying away as a bitter silence enveloped us. I remember feeling my stomach drop, my heart racing because I recognized the sudden change in the room's energy. I wanted to shake him, to pull him back from the brink, but those words slipped out so easily, like peeling a dried leaf, revealing the fragile stem beneath. We all sat there, frozen, as Amanda's face drained of color. The laughter had transformed into a silence that felt like a chain tightening around our necks. The subsequent moments played out like a slow-motion disaster. Amanda's eyes filled with a cocktail of confusion and hurt, a raw look that carved itself deep in my memory. In that blink of time, Ravi had effectively mishandled a relationship built on laughter and mutual support, devolving it into a series of insidious doubts and criticisms. I watched as Amanda left, her footsteps echoing softly against the pavement outside the cafe, the door a barrier between the normalcy we had known and the aftermath of one careless moment. Ravi, once buoyant and secure, was suddenly a hollow version of himself, guilt creeping in like a thief under the cover of night. The lively chatter between us evaporated, replaced with awkward glances and fidgeting hands, an innocent game transformed into the catalyst for his unraveling. Days turned into weeks, and it wasn't long before the repercussions spiraled like a whirlwind. Ravi couldn't face Amanda after that, buried under a blanket of guilt and frayed nerves, and his isolation became palpable. He missed her laughter, her light, and maybe that's what made it worse, watching him realize that his careless words had shattered the bond they had crafted with so much joy. I remember sitting beside him in our usual booth, the shadow of that night lurking between us, like an unwanted guest, as he stared out the window, lost in a different kind of game. Friends tried to reach out, tried to talk to him, but he retreated further into himself, crafting barriers where there once were connections. I wrestled with my own emotions, feeling helpless, wishing I could rewind the past and snatch those words from the air like fluttering leaves caught in the wind. As time went on, I noticed that the laughter we once shared transformed into whispers behind closed doors, and eventually, Ravi drifted away from the circle entirely, a ghost to the faces he once knew. The realization struck me heavy, like the turning of a page that would never be read again. In just a matter of minutes, he not only ruined a relationship but also splintered his sense of self and our friendship, as if he'd unwittingly untied a knot that bound our lives together. Reflecting on it now, I can't help but wonder how different things might have been had he chosen a different path that night, had he opted for a lighter dare instead of bearing his insecurities and fears. In this quiet wrinkle of my memory, Ravi's story serves as a subtle reminder of the power words hold, their potential to uplift or pierce through the fabric of our lives, demonstrating how swiftly life can change when we least expect it, leading to inevitable reflections on what we hold dear and the fragility of our connections. As for Ravi, well, he eventually reached out to me on a rainy evening several months later, after countless days of silence, stating simply, "I hope she'll forgive me," and in response to those words, I found myself still hanging tight to the echoes of laughter, forever wishing for a reunion over that familiar cup of coffee. I could only nod, realizing that sometimes, restoring those broken bridges takes time and effort, and perhaps, a willingness to confront the truth we buried under layers of regret. As the droplets danced rhythmically against my window that night, I couldn't shake the memories of the last time Ravi and I had met, echoes of laughter and shared stories still lingering in the corners of my mind. It had been during that warm afternoon in late spring, the sunlight filtering through the lush trees of the tiny cafe where we often spent our weekends. We were carefree then, lost in conversation about our dreams, interspersed with plans of adventure that felt infinite in their potential. But as life often does, it yanked us from that blissful inertia into a reality rife with choices, each one a fork in the road waiting to be taken. The shift had been sudden, a phone call, a panicked conversation in hushed tones, and subsequent decisions made in sheer haste. In my naivety, I thought that our bond would weather any storm. Ravi's act of desperation, however, had left a fracture precisely where I least expected it. The message he sent that evening was cradled within the complexities of our shared history. I could feel my heart tugging in two directions, one pulling me toward the past, where everything felt safe and familiar, and the other gnawing at me with the weight of uncertainty. At first, responding felt daunting. I stared at my phone long enough that I could almost hear the ticking of my heartbeat, each pulsation echoing my indecision. Would forgiving him be too easy? Or would it leave me open to more hurt? I thought. Maybe it was me who needed to forgive myself for allowing the facade of invulnerability to blind me to the inherent fragility of human connections. I took a deep breath, recalling the moments we had shared, the ones that had built the foundation of what I thought would last a lifetime. Perhaps the past did not hold the power to define our future. I finally typed out, "It's not about forgiveness, Ravi. It's about understanding and finding a way to move forward." The flickering light from the street cast transient shadows across my living room, and in that stillness, I could almost hear the past whispering to me, urging for closure. Days turned into weeks as we exchanged texts, dismantling the walls of tension brick by brick. Eventually, we found ourselves face to face once again, under the same old cafe awning, its familiar aroma of brewing coffee rising to greet us. The conversation felt a bit stilted at first, but as we sipped our drinks, the laughter began to trickle back into our repartee like a slow, steady stream. We ventured into conversations that unearthed buried feelings, explored regrets as carefully as one might sift through old photographs, trying to make sense of it all. As Ravi shared his experience of that life-altering decision, the clarity of his remorse wove through each word, heavy with the knowledge that it was not just his life that had unraveled in minutes, it was a tapestry of bonds, trust, and affection that had hung precariously on a wall shared with many, and in that intricately woven space was the reality of pain and healing that sometimes felt insurmountable. Listening to him, I couldn't help but feel a collective understanding that our stories, while undeniably personal, belong to a more universal narrative, a dance between love and loss, hope and despair. Each experience echoed the knowledge that we are all just trying to navigate our paths through this chaotic symphony called life. Hours melted away as we reminisced, our laughter enveloping the cafe, which seemed to cradle us in its familiar embrace. Perhaps the most liberating moment came when I noticed that, in allowing ourselves to confront the past, we had freed the present to shine through, unburdened. There was a sense of grace and understanding that connections, while fragile, also hold immense strength when nourished with communication, empathy, and honesty. As I walked home that evening, I carried with me a renewed hope, a subtle but undeniable shift in my heart. I had learned that time holds a certain magic. It doesn't eliminate pain, but rather, teaches us to cohabitate with it, redefining what it means to forgive and be forgiven. Whether or not our paths would run parallel again, I felt lighter, as if the shadows that had quietly lingered were finally beginning to lift. Perhaps there would come a day when Ravi and I would share another cup of coffee, this time a celebration of resilience, a testament to our journeys filled with missteps leading to redemption. Or perhaps, in the grand tapestry of life, we would simply find ourselves caught by chance in the tapestry of moments, still reaching out for those bridges, a little more tender than before, understanding of the immense fragility that we all shared. It was a realization that life is but a flicker of time, a collection of minutes where decisions can break intricate patterns or redirect them towards new beginnings, and ultimately, we become the authors of our own stories. The week following Ravi's message, as the rain drizzled down my window and formed little rivers that traced irregular paths down the glass, I felt a profound shift in my heart. The gray clouds outside reflected the mixture of uncertainty and hope swirling inside me. I thought about how quickly things can spiral, how, in mere moments, a decision can cascade, changing everything that follows. Ravi had not only lost a relationship, he had unwittingly set off a chain reaction that upended his life and the lives of those around him. The regret in his voice that night lingered in my mind like an echo, a reminder of the precariousness of every choice we make. I imagined him in that coffee shop where we shared countless laughs, now perhaps sitting alone, sipping something bitter while staring into nothingness. I remembered a time, long before his fall from grace, when we sat at that same cafe, our dreams spilling over our mugs as we plotted our futures with an eagerness that seemed to belong only to the young and unburdened. But life has a way of catching up with you, I mused. Often when you least expect it. I decided then to reach out, to suggest we meet. Surely, there was healing in confronting the past, in standing side by side and daring to speak of what had happened, rather than letting it hang in the air like that final, awkward question before a departure. It took only a short message, a casual invitation framed in care and the memories of laughter, for him to respond with enthusiasm laced with a weariness that told me he had been waiting for this moment. We settled on a small, quaint cafe, the kind that held the charm of an old friend, the aroma of fresh coffee and baked goods wafted through the air, wrapping around us like a warm embrace. When I arrived, I spotted him at our usual table, a slightly worn look on his face, a testament to both time and the struggles that occupied it. The once vibrant spark in his eyes had dimmed, replaced by a glimmer of hope tucked behind a veil of regret. As we exchanged pleasantries and sat down, the air felt thick, charged with unspoken words and a potent mix of what-ifs. I couldn't help but notice how we both had changed. The innocence of our younger selves seemed impossibly distant. "I've been thinking a lot about that night," he began, his voice barely a whisper, and I could sense the weight of the walls around his heart crumbling slowly. We revisited memories, the good and the painful, and somewhere amidst the stream of shared laughter and sorrow, there emerged a fragility more profound than I ever anticipated. Ravi confessed how one misstep transformed his once promising future into an abyss of sadness, a single night where poor choices redefined his relationships and shattered long-held dreams. He spoke of his wake-up calls, the sleepless nights, and the relentless thought of how he had torn apart the very threads that connected him to the people who mattered most. I listened, each word a brushstroke painting the stark rawness of his journey, one that had changed him in ways I could scarcely comprehend. Yet amidst the confessions, I also felt a stirring of admiration for the courage he displayed in standing before me, owning his mistakes with humility rather than bitterness. As the conversation deepened, narratives intertwined, and we rediscovered that the essence of our friendship remained intact, nestled under layers of experience and time like treasures forgotten yet cherished. The moment felt electric, transformative even, as we gradually ventured into those tender territories of forgiveness and understanding. I could finally voice how I had felt during those haunting months of silence, how the echoes of our camaraderie had haunted me in odd moments, how easy it had been to slip into narratives of anger and resentment instead of compassion and patience. His eyes reflected understanding, and we both recognized the beauty and acceptance in recognizing our human flaws. By the end of our conversation, something shifted in both of us, an unspoken agreement that healing wasn't about erasing the past but about embracing it, weaving it into our ongoing saga rather than letting it define us. As I stood to leave, I looked back at him, a smile breaking over my face, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I felt light, untethered from the burden of past mistakes. We exchanged promises to meet again, and reluctantly, I watched him leave with a tentative hope stirring in my chest. The rain had stopped outside, leaving the world washed anew, glistening under a timid sun breaking through the clouds, much like us. As I walked home, I reflected on our meeting. Life is indeed a series of fleeting minutes, and in every one of those moments, we are granted the chance to reclaim what was lost, to celebrate resilience, and to recognize that while we may stumble, we always have the power to rise again, a little wiser and a little kinder to ourselves in the face of fragility. I never thought I would find myself in the midst of such chaos, but there I was, sitting on the edge of my bed before the door swung open and my best friend, Clara, rushed in, her face flushed with a mixture of anger and panic. It was a rainy Wednesday, the kind of day that makes you want to curl up with a book and forget the world outside, but today was different. Today marked 3 months since Clara's boyfriend, Ryan, had walked out, leaving her broken-hearted and desperate for answers that I had a sinking feeling she would never find. For years, I had stood by her through this tumultuous journey of love and heartache, but the truth was that I'd grown tired of her constant excuses, of the way she seemed to repeatedly brush aside her culpability in the relationship's unraveling to cling to her victim narrative. Ryan had been a good man, scrupulously faithful, but I'd watched the way Clara would flirt with him during parties, the subtle yet unmistakable invitations that would lead to late-night phone calls where she would complain about how distant he had become. I felt the weight of my own silence pressing down on me, which was why, on that rainy evening, when Clara burst into my room, I finally found the words I had been holding back for months. "Clara, can we talk?" I asked gently, hoping to soften the blow. As the words left my mouth, I felt a storm brewing within me. It was time to address the elephant in the room, no matter how much I dreaded what might unfold. Clara plopped herself onto my bed, a worn-out tear-streaked pillow held tightly against her chest as she anxiously ran her fingers through her tousled hair. "I just can't understand why he left, you know? I did everything for him," she lamented, her voice thick with helplessness. I looked into her eyes, swimming with confusion, and wondered how many times I had already fed her excuses, how many nights I had indulged her tales of woe without ever once saying what I really thought. "Maybe if you had just," I started, my voice betraying my hesitation, but she interrupted me with a wave of her hand. "What? If I had just what? Let him do whatever he wanted while I sat on the sidelines watching?" The accusation hung in the air like a heavy fog. It was then I understood I had to tread carefully. "Clara," I said slowly, choosing my words with as much care as I could. "I think if you hadn't always tried to get with him, maybe he wouldn't have left you." The moment the words spilled out, the tension crackled like electricity between us. Clara's expression morphed from hurt to outrage. I could almost see the gears turning in her mind as she struggled to process my blunt honesty. "How could you say that? You're my best friend. Aren't you supposed to support me?" I felt a wave of guilt wash over me, but it was quickly replaced by a lingering urge to defend my stance. I reminded myself that friendship sometimes required uncomfortable truths, sometimes it meant risking the bond for something more substantial. "I am supporting you, but it feels like you've never truly seen how your actions have affected your relationships. It's not just about what Ryan did, it's about us taking accountability too." The silence that followed was heavy, laden with unspoken words. Clara's gaze fell to her lap, and for a moment, I thought I'd lost her for good. It was then she looked back up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. It was a look of vulnerability that I had rarely seen. "Maybe you're right," she whispered, almost too quietly to hear. "Maybe I need to reevaluate how I treat the people I love." I felt an unexpected relief wash over me. Often, the hardest conversations turn out to be the most necessary. We spent the rest of the evening talking in quiet tones, not eliminating the possibility of her feelings but rather exploring them, digging into the roots of her behavior. Each shared memory seemed to stitch us back together, slowly mending the cracks that had begun to spread between us. Weeks passed, and as Clara began to explore some of her choices in therapy, I too found myself reflecting on our friendship. It became clear to me that I hadn't only been a friend to Clara, I had also held on to her anger to shield my own insecurities. I called Ryan one evening, just to check in, and surprisingly, he was open to talking. He spoke about how difficult the breakup had been for him, acknowledging the tension between the three of us. It was strange to see another person's hurt mirrored in my own thoughts. After all, hadn't all of this stemmed from a place of miscommunication? Maybe we all had a part to play in this tangled web. In the end, our friendships deepened but morphed into something new. Clara found solace in a different place of strength, and Ryan began to explore his own journey of healing. And me? I learned that sometimes addressing uncomfortable truths is a pathway to a better understanding of ourselves and the relationships we value the most. Months later, when I invited Clara to talk again, I could tell we were two friends who had survived a storm together. "You know," she said with a wistful smile. "That was a real turning point, wasn't it?" I nodded, feeling the warmth between us, the shared strength formed through honesty and confrontation, a bond that, while bruised, had somehow been made stronger. And maybe, just maybe, we would find our way back to laughter and light, as friendships are prone to do. I sat with her in that quiet moment, reflecting on how rain often gives way to the sun. The experience wasn't just about blame or regret, it was a hard lesson in growth, empathy, and the importance of holding each other accountable as we navigate this unpredictable thing called love. The silence lingered, comfortable yet heavy, as we both processed everything that had been said. I glanced out the window, noticing the rain had finally ceased. It felt like a metaphor for our turbulent conversation, a storm that had passed, leaving behind a kind of clarity. "You know," I said softly, breaking the quiet, "you might not want to hear this, but part of me is glad this happened." Her eyebrows furrowed in confusion, and I quickly added, "Not because of the pain, but because it forced us to confront the things we usually sweep under the rug." She turned to me, her expression softening as she nodded, a hint of understanding dancing in her eyes. We were two souls tangled in a web of relationships, me, the one who had tried to help her see where her actions were leading, and her, the one who had, perhaps unknowingly, steered her life into choppy waters. We spoke for hours, delving into her relationship with Jake, her boyfriend, and the heartache that had been crippling her since he left. I listened as she recounted the moments that led to their unraveling, the desperation to feel wanted battling against the impulses that drove her to seek affirmation in places it didn't belong. "Every time I thought about you and Tyler laughing together, it made me feel like I was missing something," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. It was an admission filled with vulnerable honesty that echoed in the quiet of my living room, sinking into the spaces where judgment had dissolved. As our conversation unfolded, I realized that not only was I trying to disentangle her from her own thoughts, but perhaps also from my lingering resentment over how her actions had affected my life. Eventually, the air shifted from confrontation to appreciation, as she thanked me for pushing her to see the reality of her choices. "You saved me from myself, you know that?" she said, her voice laced with gratitude. I felt a surge of warmth at her acknowledgement, a soothing balm on the wounds that had formed from the conflict. "Sometimes you need someone to be honest with you, even if it stings," I replied, wishing she understood how difficult it had been for me to say the words I had spoken. The evening wore on, and with every moment we shared, the shadows of our past began to recede, illuminating the path before us. On a whim, I suggested we consider starting a book club together, something that had been a long-standing joke between us. The idea was met with a laugh, and just like that, we transitioned from heavy-hearted discussions to playful banter about what books we might choose. It was a brilliant revelation, the whimsical notion of stories to share and discuss drawing us back into the familiar rhythm of our friendship, leaving our deeper troubles behind, if only for a moment. As the night wore on, I felt the worry of aftermath slowly lift, maybe the storm had truly passed. I turned off the lights, wrapping us both in the cozy familiarity of warm blankets and the faint scent of chamomile tea wafting through the air. It was in those shared breaths, wrapped in comfort, laughter, and the reverberating echoes of our goodbyes to hurt, that I finally dared to hope. Perhaps building back our friendship wouldn't just be a chore, but an adventure, one step at a time. After all, every story of conflict can lead to new beginnings. When I later wrote my post on the AITA thread, I framed it not just around the tumult of those moments but also around the evolution of our bond. It truly is a testament to how love, in all its forms, can ultimately rise from the very ashes of pain. And as I hit submit, I felt a wave of catharsis wash over me, a sense of closure for what had been. The comments that followed, filled with support and shared stories, became a living testament to the resilience of relationships, no matter how strained they may become. Hours later, as I finally drifted off to sleep, I clung to the thought that even the heaviest rainstorms make way for the brightest dawns, and perhaps this new dawn was the beginning of something beautiful for both of us. As I slipped into the soft embrace of sleep, my mind swirled with hopeful visions of the days to come, where laughter would find its way back into our conversations and the lingering shadows of doubt would fade into a distant memory. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the window, casting delicate patterns on the floor, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I awoke with a sense of peace that seemed to linger just outside my consciousness, waiting to be acknowledged. I reached for my phone, half expecting a cascade of notifications, but found only a solitary message from Sarah, my best friend. It read simply, "Can we talk?" I could sense the apprehension in those 3 words, a quiet echo of all the unsaid apologies hanging between us. While I was eager to engage, I also felt a tightening in my chest at the thought of another difficult conversation. What would I say? Did I even know how to approach it? Taking a deep breath, I replied with a tentative, "Of course, when and where?" We decided to meet at our favorite cafe, a small, cozy place adorned with whimsical decor and the intoxicating aroma of fresh pastries. Arriving a bit early, I perched on a low stool, my heart thudding in anticipation of what would unfold. When she walked in, she appeared almost ethereal, the sunlight catching the strands of her hair, framing her face like a soft halo. Yet, beneath that radiant exterior, I recognized the shadows of uncertainty etched in her expression. She slid into the seat across from me, and we exchanged hesitant smiles, as if testing the waters after a storm. "I'm really sorry," Sarah began, her voice shaky but sincere. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about how selfish I was, and I don't know how I let it get that far." I wanted to jump in, to assure her that we would be okay, but something inside urged me to let her voice her feelings first. "So," I nodded, prompting her to continue. "It's just. I guess I wanted what you had, without realizing the toll it would take on our friendship." "I know I hurt you," she said, her eyes glistening. There was pain in her words, a raw honesty that cut through the layers of our past. I felt something within me soften as I listened. It dawned on me just how much she had been struggling with her insecurities, having always looked up to the love I shared with my husband. "You were caught in a fantasy, just as I was," I replied softly. "It's hard to separate our desires from reality, and trust me, I've had my fair share of doubts. I thought things would always be perfect, but things change." We talked for hours, layers of misunderstanding peeled away like the soft petals of a spring blossom, revealing the roots of our friendship still intact beneath the surface. It felt refreshing to vent, to listen, and to empathize as we shared our past victories and losses, reinforcing how we had each found ourselves longing for something we had overlooked, the prioritization of our friendship over fleeting moments of jealousy or neglect. As time slipped by, I felt a sense of healing course through me. It wasn't just about reconciling our pasts but also about understanding the deeper roots of our connection. By the time we reached the end of our coffee, I felt as if we had created a new layer in our bond, more resilient than before. "So, what now?" I asked as we gathered our things, feeling light. "I think we should take it slow, just focus on being us again," she mused. "Let's just hang out, like we used to without any complications." I grinned, surprised at the weight that had lifted between us. We had learned a hard lesson together, one I hoped would keep us stronger and more connected moving forward. In the days that followed, we slowly began to rebuild our friendship. We went for runs by the river, where we laughed until our sides hurt, cooking together on the weekends, and even picking out movies to binge on lazy afternoons. Each gathering felt therapeutic, stitching together the frayed edges of our lives. I also saw how she began to take a step back from seeking validation in the attention of others and focused more on nourishing her self-worth. It was inspiring, and I felt grateful to witness her growth. Pain, it turned out, was not the end of our journeys but merely a pit stop on the way to something extraordinary. And with each passing day, the sunlight grew brighter, reminding me of how our lives could soften and reshape after a heavy rainstorm. As for my marriage, that too started to flourish. My husband had come to understand the weight of the situation, and we worked on cultivating stronger communication, prioritizing our bond in a way that honored its foundation. Perhaps we were all just learning how to navigate the complexities of love, friendship, and desire, an ongoing journey where every misstep could lead to enlightening perspectives. The day came when I found myself pouring out my heart again in another Reddit post, this time sharing the beautiful progress we had made, casting a brighter light on the lessons of accountability and unconditional support. We're all flawed, I wrote, but embracing each other's flaws can lead to something even more beautiful. It was cathartic, feeling the words tumble out freely, no longer burdened by resentment but buoyed by hope. As I hit submit, I looked out the window at the dawn breaking over the horizon, the colors blending seamlessly together, and for a moment, it felt like I was standing at the brink of an adventure, one built on healing and sincerity. What followed was a stream of encouraging comments and heartfelt messages from fellow Redditors who had experienced their own journeys of reconciliation, and they reminded me that the most difficult paths can lead to unexpected destinations, the small moments of joy, the laughter shared over coffee, and the deepening of true friendship. Just as I had hoped, the rain had brought forth a new dawn, and now, with each gentle wave of connection that rolled in, I understood that sometimes, the darkest storms create the most stunning landscapes. There's a certain hush that blankets the world when the clock strikes midnight, a stillness that feels both serene and unsettling, and it's during one of these quiet moments that I found myself grappling with the choices that led me to the life I now lead. My name is Mark, and I earned over $10,000 a month designing immersive virtual environments for high-stakes clients, yet beneath this carefully crafted facade of success lay a tangled web of anxiety and regret. It wasn't always like this, of course. Years ago, I was just another dreamer plodding through an uninspiring 9-to-5, my hopes neatly tucked into the corners of my modest cubicle, dreaming of escape. It was during one of those soul-sucking days that I first stumbled upon an online forum where people shared the secrets of their financial success. Ask Reddit for those earning over $10,000 per month, what do you do for a living to achieve that income? The title read, and in a moment of reckless curiosity, I clicked, devouring the tales of entrepreneurs who had transformed their passions into thriving careers. Inspired, I spent the next 2 years building an online presence, experimenting tirelessly with design until I finally landed my first big client, a tech startup working to revolutionize virtual reality for training simulations. My life shifted overnight. I moved out of my cramped apartment into a sleek downtown loft, relishing the attention and validation that came from my newfound lifestyle. But soon after the novelty wore off, whispers of doubt crept into my mind, late nights hunched over my screen, a carousel of client demands, and the pressure to maintain an image of success turned my triumph into a mundane cycle of anxiety. All I could think about was whether I was truly happy or merely living a facade of fulfillment, and the divide between my desires and my reality grew deeper. One evening, while preparing for another video call with a particularly demanding client, I overheard my neighbor, Sarah, talking in animated tones about her plans to quit her corporate job and start her own baking business. It was unpredictable, unstable, yet the fervor in her voice was palpable, filling the hallway with passion, something I hadn't felt in months. I couldn't help but feel a pang of envy and nostalgia. Her pursuit of happiness felt genuine, unlike the hollow satisfaction my success seemed to offer. As I lay in bed that night, the glow of my monitor casting a bluish hue across the room, I felt a wave of self-doubt wash over me, culminating in a gnawing question: was the money really worth it? Unable to shake that lingering thought, I resolved to confront my reality. The very next morning, I reached out to Sarah and, over coffee, shared my journey, confessing my admiration for her liberating choice. We talked for hours, bonding over our dreams and fears, and by the end of the conversation, an idea sparked in my mind: what if I started a side project, perhaps a collaborative digital art installation that combined both our talents? I could provide the technical expertise while she infused the narrative with warmth and connection. It wouldn't be about the income but the joy of creativity and collaboration. The following weeks were transformative. As I chipped away at this new project, the excitement coursed through me like electricity. I felt invigorated as I would work late into the night, not because I had to, but because I chose to, and my perspective began to shift. My clients noticed my renewed passion as well. My work improved and the projects became less of a burden and more of a form of expression. The joy that emanated from the collaboration poured into other aspects of my life, rekindling friendships and bringing more laughter into my home. Although my monthly earnings fluctuated, I found a new balance that transcended money. The culmination of our joint project was both daunting and exhilarating, a site unveiling at a gallery downtown, a breathtaking journey through virtual landscapes inspired by personal stories of transformation. As our visitors wandered through the exhibit, hearing heartfelt narratives interwoven with the stunning visuals, I realized I had found a new purpose, one that didn't solely hinge on financial success. I've learned that fulfillment isn't defined by a dollar amount, but rather by the connections we forge and the passion we nurture. In retrospect, it's the vibrant tapestry of life experiences that we weave together, and sometimes, stepping off the beaten path is the best decision we could ever make. Update: since the exhibit, I've decided to take on fewer clients, focusing on projects that truly resonate with me while nurturing this new creative venture with Sarah. Together, we're exploring deeper collaboration while offering workshops for aspiring artists and business owners. My income is more modest now, but I feel richer in ways that surpass money. My life has become a canvas painted with vibrant colors I never knew I could create. Every day since I made that shift, I revel in waking up with the sun slanting gently through the window, illuminating the room in soft golden hues. My mornings have transformed from hastily throwing on clothes and mentally running through deadlines to slow, balanced rituals that awaken my senses. I brew a cup of rich, dark coffee, inhaling that earthy aroma that has become a comforting staple in my life. I often catch myself standing on the balcony, coffee in hand, taking in the serene beauty of the world around me, the rustle of leaves in a light breeze, the quiet chatter of birds, and sometimes even the distant laughter of children playing in a nearby park. This tranquility serves as the perfect backdrop for my thoughts, allowing my creative juices to flow in ways they haven't for far too long. I think back to the days when money felt like the only measure of success and wonder how I let myself forget the true joy of creation. Sarah's energy is truly infectious. We spend hours brainstorming, sketching ideas in our notebooks, and cracking open a bottle of wine late in the evenings to give life to our shared dreams. With each passing day, collaborating with her feels less like work and more like a coming together of two souls who genuinely understand one another, each having transcended the limits our previous careers imposed on us. The workshops we've started have been nothing short of magical. Watching aspiring artists and business owners learn from our experiences and find their own voices is fulfilling in ways I had never anticipated. Each session is filled with laughter, creativity, and a shared commitment to drive our passions forward, and I'm beginning to see the glimmers of their potential reflected back at me. The energy in the room is palpable, tinged with a sense of mutual growth and encouragement, a space devoid of judgment where creativity flourishes. I vividly remember a participant shared how she had been too afraid to pursue her artistic inclinations for years, feeling trapped by society's expectations. When she finally unveiled her painting, tears streamed down her face not just from relief, but from the dawning realization that she had the right to express herself fully. That moment struck a chord deep within me, reinforcing my decision to step away from the frenetic rush of my previous life. I can hardly believe how far I've come, both personally and professionally. Sure, the financial stability I used to enjoy has been replaced by a more modest existence, but the richness I experience now is found in the moments made of laughter, creativity, and vulnerability. I've learned to redefine what it means to feel fulfilled. It's more layered and genuine than I ever imagined. Evenings have taken on a new rhythm. Often, I'll find myself cozied up on the couch, wrapped in a warm blanket, feeling grateful as I share stories or brainstorm ideas with Sarah. Sometimes we stay silent, simply enjoying each other's presence, letting our thoughts intermingle as the day slowly fades into night, sprinkled with stars that shine like dreams waiting to be realized. It's a raw, honest reflection of where I am now, and looking back seems almost alien compared to the internal freedom I feel. In the quiet, my mind often wanders to those early days of my transition, where I felt a cacophony of uncertainties swirling in my head. There's that small part of me that occasionally whispers doubts, wondering if I should be chasing after clients again or regretting my slower, more intentional pace. But then I remind myself, this is where the real treasure lies. I reconnect with that vibrant sense of purpose. The voice that once drowned under the chaos has returned, more robust than before. It tells me to trust the process, that fulfillment won't be measured by one's bank account but by the lives I touch, including my own, that stepping off the beaten path is not merely a reluctant retreat, but rather a brave journey into the wilderness of possibility. A little part of me even wonders if I could ever go back. I feel like a bird that's finally taken flight, feeling the exhilarating rush of wind beneath my wings, and now, the thought of confinement is laughable. And while I acknowledge the practicalities of life, utility bills and groceries, there's an undercurrent of excitement that pulses through me at the thought of exploring all these new possibilities with Sarah. Together, we're embarking on more than just a venture, we're cultivating a community of dreamers and creatives, revitalizing the world around us as we push toward a shared vision. The fact that I am earning less doesn't feel like a loss, rather, it is an investment in a richer life, one that sings with authenticity and connection. As I lay in bed each night, I find comfort in knowing I have overcome the doubts that once clawed at my heart. Weaving the threads of passion and purpose into the fabric of our daily lives feels like the ultimate act of rebellion against the voices that once dictated what success should look like. The canvas of my life is expanding, and I look forward to the beautiful strokes that are yet to come, eager for tomorrow's sunrise and the promise of new beginnings it holds. As the days stretched into weeks, each morning felt like an invitation to paint my life anew. Mornings were no longer merely a ritual of waking and rushing, but rather cherished moments where I could savor a steaming cup of tea, feeling the warmth seep into my palms while sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the wooden floors in soft golden hues. With Sarah by my side, our partnership blossomed both in art and in life. We crafted workshops that not only encouraged budding artists but also drew in small business owners eager to translate their passions into viable enterprises. There was something profoundly satisfying in sharing our knowledge, watching individuals rediscover their dreams, their eyes alight with the spark of possibility. One day, as we wrapped up another successful workshop, I noticed Clara, a quiet woman in her 40s, lingering behind. Her hands trembled slightly as she set her finished piece on the table, a vibrant painting that depicted a sunlit garden, reminiscent of her childhood home. The colors were bold and raw, each stroke bursting with unfiltered emotion. Approaching her, I could see the tears pooling in her eyes, reflecting a swirling mix of pride and vulnerability. "I haven't let myself paint in years," she confessed, her voice shaking. "I forgot what it felt like to create something that was just me." As she spoke, I realized how deeply our workshops touched lives beyond mere art. We were touching on the core of what it meant to be human. Feeling an overwhelming surge of empathy, I reached out, squeezing her hand gently. "You've unveiled something beautiful today," I replied, knowing that her creativity was not just a form of expression but a breakthrough, a return to a part of herself she'd hidden away. Interactions like these filled my heart with warmth, creating a bridge between those in the workshop and the artists we were becoming ourselves, breaking down the invisible walls of isolation we often feel in our journeys. Yet, it wasn't all smooth sailing. The transition from a high-earning career to one of modest income had its challenges, especially concerning my savings. I began watching my financial habits, trimming down on daily luxuries. Dinners out with friends turned into cozy potlucks, spontaneous weekend getaways became quiet hiking adventures, and my wardrobe shifted to a blend of artistic thrift finds. At first, I fought against the changes, courage challenging my fears, but I soon discovered that life offered deeper, more fulfilling experiences outside the bustling consumer world I'd once inhabited. One rainy evening, as I sat curled up in our studio, surrounded by brushes and canvases, I received a text from my old business partner, Greg. He wanted to meet up to discuss a collaboration on a project I'd once been a part of, one that had been lucrative but lacked passion. Maybe it was curiosity, or perhaps just the need to understand how my old life could intersect with my new, but I agreed. Our meeting was at a trendy cafe in town, the kind that thrummed with energy and sold overpriced coffee. As Greg walked in, a formally polished shadow of the creative I once knew, I felt conflicting emotions rush through me, nostalgia mixed with a hint of disappointment. "I've been meaning to tell you," he started, his gaze scanning the vibrant artworks hanging on the walls. "Your exhibit was different, real." The compliment felt heavy, almost burdensome, a reminder of the crossroads I had danced between. "It was all about authenticity," I replied softly, feeling a flicker of pride. We fell into routine conversation, yet beneath the surface, there was an undercurrent of tension, the acknowledgement that we were no longer on the same pathway despite sharing a rich history. As Greg detailed his latest projects, I felt the distance between our definitions of success widen. The conversation turned to income as he casually mentioned, "You should consider coming back, Angela, you were always brilliant at landing high-paying clients." The suggestion hung heavy in the air, the implication swirling around us like a dark cloud. "I'm not sure I want that life anymore," I found myself saying, my heart racing at the sudden defiance. What good is high income without fulfillment? His expression tightened, and I watched as he struggled to understand, trapped in his corporate mentality. That evening, as I returned home, the warmth of my studio felt especially comforting. I knew this was where I belonged, where my spirit danced freely, unswayed by the binary metrics of success. In the following weeks, my resolve only strengthened. Clara returned to our workshops, her growth a small but significant testament to our collective purpose. The pieces we were crafting transcended the canvas, forming a community where passion wasn't measured in dollar signs but in authentic connections. As I lay down each night, the worries about finances certainly still lingered, but they grew quieter, overshadowed by the vibrant tapestry of newfound purpose in my life. I realized wealth truly resided not in bank accounts but in the moments we shared, laughter over a shared meal, the joyous shouts of a budding artist celebrating their first piece, or even the quiet contentment of painting side by side with a friend. And eventually, one evening as dusk settled, painting with Sarah in the fading light, I listened to her quiet humming, a simple melody so soothing, it seemed to weave itself around us like a shawl. She turned to me and smiled, and something in that moment clicked. The threads of our separate lives were intertwining, building a hopeful future filled with colors yet to come. Each night, as I drifted into sleep, I surrendered to the beauty of the unknown that awaited with the dawn, grateful for the shadows that led me here, confident that whatever lay ahead, I would continue to create my story one brushstroke at a time.